It's indeed a very, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. This edition of the Tackle is the Sharia Wiki edition of the 14th of October 2022. Tarehe 18 mwezi wa 10 mwaka 2022. Hope you're doing well. It's another Friday. The week is already out. It's another Friday. Good morning. Good morning to you. Kama kawaida, please when you join, please like when you like, we get to know that you're watching us. And after like, please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. This is the Tackle and it begins right now. The Sharia Wiki edition of the 14th of October 2022. We have the LSK President, ERICK THEURI. We have Dr. DUNCAN OJWANG, Dean of Law Africa NAZARENE. And we also have Dr. EKURU AUKOT, Party Leader, the Third Way Alliance, who is always the headliner on Sharia Wiki here. And we'll be having a discussion around a raft of legal issues that have been happening. There's been great legal happenings around the country of late. For the whole week, we've been having what we call a release en masse by the DPP. The DPP has been releasing most politicians who have been accused of corruption off the hook, beginning with past cases like Ben Juma at KPLC and 10 others who were released. We're having again the case of Aisha Juma, which was dropped. We have the case of YT2, which was dropped as well. As we have others who have been dropped in, as waiting also to go back to court, including Kimunya and all the other politicians from the other side. We're going to look at that and get to understand the legal balance of it, have a legal background, what are the consequences in terms of court proceedings and also judicial processes. We'll also be having a conversation around the CASs. The LSK, Law Society of Kenya, has gone to court to block the PSC, Public Service Commission, from establishing the office of the CAS. And the Public Service Commission as well has given a rebuttal yesterday, and they have said, we have already set up the office, so you cannot implement the order. So remember, back in 2019, the CS positions has been ruled as unconstitutional, null and void. So we're going to look at that as well. What are the chances that PSC has against the LSK? And also, what are the chances that LSK as well be able to present their case and win against the PSC and probably declare the CAS positions unconstitutional, null and void, as we are used in the park. Kama kaida lazima twende mbele za Mungu tuombe, alafu basi tukirudi na kujua ni nani ameweza kuamka mapema. If you have any question as well, please, you can send it to us so that we can have this conversation together. If you have any question, you can send it to us. We can have this conversation. There are other Kenyans as well with bad manners, and they're destroying roads. We're having a lot of vandalism on Jogoo Road, and we're going to look at that as well. What are the legal, what's the legal vanguard against vandalism? All right, mighty Father, we come before you this morning. We worship you, glorify them. Thank you for another opportunity to be alive. We thank you for this conversation. We thank you for every tackler. As we start off, may you be with us when we finish. And as you have this conversation, may it edify the fabric of this country. For you pray, trusting and believing. Amen. Let's see who is up this morning. Hilary Mokochot, good morning, General. Good morning to you. Kipchumba Bwambok, we are in and ready. Thank you so much. Lucy Jessa, at long last, I'm here with you. It's been busy, but I'm free today. Thank you so much, Lucy. It's a pleasure to have you this morning as well. Vitalis are there. Good morning. Tuned in, say hi to the guests in the studio. Thank you so much, my brother. Vitalis are there. To Kilimani Wango. Thank you so much. Salimia watu pia hapo. Agimaliel Babeo, much ready for the show. Thank you. Timoke E already in, bro. Manel Roet Kimumu, addicted to your show. Buana. Thumbs up. Thank you so much. Franklin Kimngatich Mayo. Good morning. Good morning to you. And letting Maria, happy birthday. Thank you so much for wishing me happy birthday. By the way, we men forget about our birthdays. I think it's one of those things that we don't think about until someone reminds us. But thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maria, for remembering my birthday this morning and wishing me a happy birthday. To many M-Pesa here. My M-Pesa is open. To many M-Pesa hata me nikule kitu. Asante sana. Thank you so much, Letting Maria, wishing me a happy birthday this morning. Keep Kelio Colisais Dochuria. Amen. And in fact, thank you so much. Keep Jima Kwamba all the way from Australia. What an amazing panelist today. I'm glad it's Friday evening here. Popcorn and of course nice drink as we enjoy the show. Thank you so much. Asante sana Kibaba all the way from Australia. Salimia to Australia sana. Iladi Machokor, well, loud and clear. Eldoret, thank you. Maleba, call it capture and release method of sampling. We are back to biology. Capture and release, capture again. Capture, release, and recapture. DK Cheboy, good morning, GB. Good morning to you, my brother. Nicole, good work. Thank you so much. Abraham Monguti from Rongo, tuned in loud and clear. Thank you. Cheba Mutual, Chebet, good morning from Ravine. Good to see you, Cheba Mutual. Babake Willie, good morning from KSA. Asante sana. Clinton Raf, Kirinyaga Kutus Nikorada. Watu wa Kutus mambo vipi? Mwaj Mwangi Hazman tukorada. Asante Kosgei Shokoti. Good morning to you. I hope you're doing well. Let's see who is up on YouTube this morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. It's a pleasure to have you this morning. This one, good morning, sir. Good morning to you. My airtime zilianda wapi? Airtime zinarudi next week. Ante. Investor 254 niko ndani. Good morning. Good morning to you. Please, when you join in, when you we get to know that you're watching us. And that we please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. And also, if you're new to, please make sure that you can invite 1, 2, or 3 people to subscribe to our channel. If you're new to, please send a link to someone. Tukuma link kusukume mutu ambia kuja subscribe. Kama kwa Facebook pia, please tag someone this morning. If you're on Facebook, please tag someone this morning. And let's tag 5 people. Tag 5 people at least this morning so that we can join this discussion together. Jane Mumbi, good morning from Diani and happy birthday. Thank you so much. Jane Mumbi, you owe me an holiday. Jane Mumbi. Jane Safari is by Jane. You owe me an holiday. You're supposed to give me an holiday last year, but I was busy. Now I'm very idle. You need to give me my holiday. Thank you so much, Jane Mumbi. Salimia to Adiane. Mansai, yes, bro, and check WhatsApp. Okay, so, Dangalia. Georgia Mandugu, good morning. Good morning to you. Honorable Julius Favor. Good morning, Mweshimiwa. Julius Favor, hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Daniel Kori, good morning. Gerald following from Cabernet, Baringo County. Asante sana. All right, let's begin at looking at the traffic situation on the roads this morning. Looking at Mombasa Road, all clear. Nothing to really worry about. Mombasa Road looks all clean this morning. Will be because of the expressway. Nothing to worry about. Looking at the Nyayo roundabout, nothing to worry about as well. Bunyala roundabout, nothing to worry about. Getting into Uruaiwe inbound into town, nothing to be scared about. Looking at Thika Road, kama kawaida, kuna traffic all the way from the GSU headquarters heading towards the Muthaiga Exchange. There's a lot of serious build up right there. But getting in from the Muthaiga Exchange heading towards town and Pangani, nothing to really worry about. But looking at Kiambu Road as well, jam Mbaya, all the way from the DCI, just before DCI, actually, from Total Ridgeways, there's some serious traffic build up heading towards the Muthaiga Exchange. A lot of traffic right there on both lanes on Kiambu Road. Looks all crazy this morning. Looking in at Limuru Road, kama kawaida, kuna ile shida kidogo ya heading into Parklands, the small builder that gets into town, but nothing to really worry about. Looking at Westlands area, generally nothing to worry about. Waiyaki Way looks all clean. Some little traffic at Westlands bus stage, but nothing to really worry you about. Looking at there's James Gishuru. James Gishuru looks all clean. James Gishuru looks all clean. Some little traffic at Mozambique Springs Junction, but nothing to worry about. Looking at the Lavington Mall area, nothing to be scared about. Looking at Kithanga Road as well this morning. Kithanga Road looks all clean heading towards Valley Arcade. Kingara Road looks a bit jammed up from the junction heading towards Gecko Cafe and also the Kithanga Road Exchange. Ngong Road as well. There's some traffic all the way from Lexo heading towards the Junction Mall, but nothing to be scared about. The normal traffic kidogo, but heading towards Prestige, some small traffic hapo kwa Mata kidogo, lakini nothing to really be scared about. Mbagathi Way looks all clean this morning, nothing to be scared about. Around Kenyatta roundabout looks all clean, shida tu kidogo ile Mata, but nothing to be scared about. Let me know how the traffic situation is looking like on your road. Let me know the traffic situation is looking like on your roads as well. Looking at the daily newspapers as well. The Daily Nation, Ruto recalls Moi's cars. Okay. Ruto recalls Moi's cars and staff. Okay. Mambo ya gazeti. President William Ruto, former President Kenyatta had granted a grace period. I think it was for 2 years, but it looks like that one has elapsed as well. They interviewed Lee Njiru, who said he handed over his car a week earlier than they had requested it. And he said that is a law. So there's nothing really to be sensational about. But well, we get to look at it as well. New order. President Ruto's administration has withdrawn government vehicles and other public assets, deployed workers and scaled down security at former President Moi's homes. Okay. Lawyer Sensor Aji on drop cases. Lawyers have called for a review of the evidence prosecution say is insufficient to secure conviction as they gave Director of Public Prosecution Udin Aji 3 days to disclose reasons for his withdrawal of corruption cases against President William Ruto allies. Okay. Giraitu Murungi, this is how we in Azimio lost the election. There's a story there. Since the election, the belt called Ruma Mill has been awash with numerous reasons, excuses, scapegoats, and rational explanations as to why Raila Odinga camp lost many seats, including the presidency in the last general elections. Giraitu Murungi who lost in his bid to recapture the Meru governor said, argues in this thought-provoking piece that it is very easy to blame others and attribute their defeat to external factors, even though some people have pointed out the political confusion, tactical mistakes, ideological errors, and organizational disarray, cyber rigging, rampant further bribery, and betrayals that summed up their campaign. All right. Okay, Uru's miracle political tour, which was expected to turn tables in the Mount Kenya region, didn't happen. We are waiting for the Godot. Okay, it never arrived. We were abandoned in the political battlefield. It is no wonder that we were outnumbered, outfoxed, and outperformed by UDA. Okay, finally, a commission coming in from Kiraitu Murungi. President, the organizer's government takes charge of budget, policy, and economic affairs. There's an executive order that was issued yesterday by the President William Ruto and also outlines, among others, the offices that will be established under William Ruto's presidency. Okay, looking at the standard Ruto's power structure, in an executive order last night, President Ruto outlined the face of his government and detailing roles and responsibilities of his office and those of the Deputy President, Prime Cabinet Secretary, ministries, and state departments. Okay, LSK issues ultimatum to urge on withdrawal cases are guerrilla days, handling guns in staging rockets and explosives. Okay, Champions Burger on verge of exit. Mambo ya mchezo hiyo. SIM card switch off looms for those who have not registered. If you have not registered, if you have not given your details fully at the registrar of your SIM card, your service provider, then you could be off your line very soon. Scrap metal trade fuels vandalism on Outer Ring Road. That's another conversation that we must have. Taifa leo, Raila Odinga arudi kwa maasla. Okay, Raila arudi kwa maasla. That's on Taifa leo. Mgombeaji rais wa tikiti ya muungano wa Azimio la Umoja One Kenya kwenye uchaguzi mkuu uliopita, Raila Odinga amerudi mitaani kujumuika na wananchi wa mapato ya chini maarufu kama maasla katika moja ya hatua zake za kutekeleza mikakati ya kutoa jasho serikali ya Kenya Kwanza. Haya, watetesi wa lalama, kundi la vijana watetesi wa tabia nchi barani Afrika chini ya mwavuli wa Pan African Climate Justice wanaandamana nje ya jengo ya Nation Center. Haya, wadani wa Ruto Raila wakosa kazi. Wameanza na Sosian, tume ya utumishi ya umma yakosa kutoa baadhi ya makatibu. Haya, Liverpool wafanya ukatili UEFA. The Reds wanyamazisha wanyanyasa Rangers bila huruma kwa mabao 7-1. The Star, Kinoti lied over judge. Kinoti lied over judge. Top DCI cop confesses. Okay. John Kashomo disowns Judge Sankale's statement, claims ex-DCI chief missold him. All right, okay. The story right there, you'll be able to read it. Mudavadi center stage as MPs start vetting Ruto nominees. Explain to Kenyans dropping of high-profile craft cases at LSK. And we have the LSK president here this morning. Storm over Mudavadi's prime CS job. Okay, People Daily. As the minority leader says, the NC Supremo should not be interviewed as the seat Ruto promised him is not constitutional. You know, it's not in the constitution. Wetangula to rule on the dispute on Monday. Okay. That's it on the dailies this morning. But you can let us know how things are looking at audio, and you can contribute the conversation this morning. And we start right off. Naingia kazi arakopesi. Good morning to you, President ERICK THEURI. How are you?
Asante sana, thank you for inviting me to your wonderful studio.
Good to see you this morning as well. It's your first time here.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Maybe you can introduce yourself to the viewers, to the tacklers. You kama mshaipatana nao mahali.
Tunakutananga tu mtaani. Good morning, listeners. Good morning, tacklers. My name is ERICK THEURI, president of the Law Society. And I'm glad to be here, and happy birthday to the host.
Tuendeka kitu.
Tunatuma ka M-Pesa.
All right. Pongezi also. No, you've not been able to interact since you got the position you won. You sit at the presidency at the LSK. Yes. LSK has been a very good friend of ours.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Very good friends.
And I'm glad that we can continue the relationship.
Yes. So we've been working together very closely, and you've played a very key role in helping us shape the biggest conversation in Kenya. Legal, of course. including BBI, including administration, and all the demeanor and misdemeanors of governance. So we're happy to be associated with you once again.
Yeah,
Thank you for that invite.
I'm also glad we have this opportunity because I believe that the media plays a very, very important role in shaping public discourse, especially on matters that the LSK has a statutory mandate to intervene on. And I think that the more we have this sort of partnership and the more we are able to disseminate the issues that are affecting the public and also get to hear from them what issues are affecting them, and we become more effective if we have that sort of two-way communication.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ojwang, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
It's been a while, you've been missing in action. Nasikia ndio ulikuwa unapanga serikali ama ni fitina?
I'm glad to be here. I'm grateful and glad that we have a Sharia Day, Sharia Week. There have been a lot of legal things, from the filing on GMO,
Yes.
the earlier release or dismissal of cases, the issue of the establishment of the office of CAS, the death or untimely death in the right to health, bringing into issue the issue of right to health,
Yes.
of the young child. Last week we were in Homa Bay trying to see what His Excellency offered the people of Homa Bay. So I've been up and about, but I'm doing fine.
We're glad you're doing fine. All right, I think we'll start right off on the very close issues, the social issues, of course, that we've talked about. But before we get to that, generally we start with the state of the nation. What do you think is the state of the nation, Dr.
I think the nation is waiting with a bated breath to see, to feel, to the changes. There is a lot of things we swept under the rug as we moved towards election and campaigns. And they appeared not to have mattered much then, or at least not the priority. But it was obvious that whoever will come to the office will have to now, cannot kick that can down the road anymore. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 1 week to election, the economy was almost coming to a halt. Things were very tough. Then I think, in a typical African way, we said, let us focus on this event, and then we shall deal with the rest later. Now, that later is now. The cost of living, what is going on, the big debate of do we continue with whether subsidies, what do we do to help the vulnerable? Because every state have a duty to help the most vulnerable. You remember that we saw relief food even for the livestock and the people. Within this time, we saw the serious killing again, striking of the cattle rustling that killed the many police down in Rift Valley. I think the state, the people are still expectant. The anxiety is palpating, understandably. Why? The leadership is being formed. Remember, maybe in a week or so, we will have the new cabinet sit in the office.
Yeah.
So that they can be the arm bearers for the president and the deputy president, who are right now almost working alone or with the old or former regime. I think that unlike the usual time, we didn't have a serious dip. Usually after election, we get a dip of wasting 8 months in post-election violence, post-election quarreling, post-election negotiations. Looks like this time we might escape that. And that means we can be back on our feet as soon as possible, and with the posterity measures being undertaken by His Excellency, some which are currently undergoing, some that are foundational and long-term, and some that can be felt immediately. Finally, I think we are seeing the courts being, again, the place for political contestation. Our constitution put in a way that judicialization of politics, issues of policy easily find themselves not just in the hands of the executive, but in the judiciary because of our expansive Bill of Rights, because of our the constitution, say even a mere threat to a right is justiciable. The constitution itself gives the values which are protected by the judiciary. So we are seeing, and if you want to know that Kenyans are back to their normal, is to see a lot of cases that I don't want to call political, but contesting on the direction the country should go. So if you are seeing or looking at the opposition or a lack of it, look at the court and you will see that we have extended that political contestation in court through very strategic court cases. And this will go on for long. It sucks to be court, because when court handle the political hot potato, they lose credibility, but the constitution requires them to. So their independence, their wisdom, and for Kenyans to continue working, hoping, and walking the talk. His Excellency the President, to walk the talk. We have seen quick fruits, but we are yet to see much more, including Hustler Fund, which I'm glad that this week he reconfirmed that indeed it won't be hot air. Indeed, it will not be wild goose chase. It is coming. Thank you.
All right, President ERICK THEURI, what do you think is the state of the nation? What's your feeling of the nation? What's the general pulse of the nation?
I mean, of course, there is the usual anxiety that is associated with the formation of a new government in trying to decipher the policy objectives, the direction that the new administration is going to take. And that direction, therefore, is then gleamed from some of the decisions or the initial decisions that are made by the president and his administration. I think for me, the first signs that are coming out is that there's going to be a lot of tension with regards to the question of leadership and integrity. And my feeling is that this administration will actually kill and bury the question of leadership and integrity. And we say this because the few pronouncements that have come out of the president and the deputy president are anti the constitution, anti the laws that are established. You've seen the president saying that where someone has constructed on somebody else's land, they will call the person who is the owner of the land and the one who has constructed, so that they can have a win-win situation. Of course, under the Constitution, we encourage mediation and alternative means of dispute resolution. But then what message does it send? If you are currently sitting on somebody's land, doesn't that embolden you? If there is land that is vacant somewhere that has not been developed, doesn't it make you feel like you can now get in and develop the land? And then thereafter you say, we need to talk and develop a win-win situation. Yeah. So you look at that, you look at some of the people who have been, and of course there are political rewards.
I think he was talking of adverse possession.
Well, but even if it is adverse possession, you know what the law says. It's very clear that if you are able, it's a shield. If you've been on land for more than 12 years, then legally, the ownership of the registered owner is extinguished. So that's a legal issue that then does not require any other intervention.
It does, because the aspect of title without entitlement. Wakili, you know very well that in this country, we have cases where somebody have a title without entitlement. How did they get the title? Sometime it could have been not through proper ways, but it has to take a court. But even so, when you ask, the issue of Laikipia, for example, where according to those people, the Maasai, we have the entitlement, but the title is with the few Wazungu. Isn't there a clash there between the person waiving the right to property and the person who is saying, I don't care whether your name is in the land register, this really is indeed my land. I'm looking at Kedong case, for example, and the same thing. There's title and entitlements. They are supposed to go together, but sometimes they don't. And I think you now
are getting to how explosive that issue can be if you deal with it in the manner that you are proposing to deal outside the Constitution. Because then how far back do you go? What if the Maasai come and tell you now, the whole of Nairobi, we are also entitled to it because previously this is where we used to, whatever. So you cannot throw law out of the window through this kind of public pronouncements, because unfortunately, the president of the country occupies a very a different role, and whatever he says to a certain extent even amounts to some sort of policy direction.
But remember, Truth and Justice and Reconciliation report. Actually, so we are at a place where we choose to implement, as explosive as it is, the Truth and Justice report, the Ndungu report, or we say, keep the lead back. This is explosive.
I think you're trying to give the president's remarks more credit than they deserve. And
I just know that report is pending.
You are now sort of like holding his brief. We have to take his remark in the context in which he made it. Are there issues that remain unresolved over land? Of course they are. And as a government, first of all, the most primary consideration is that land is a means of production. So therefore, if you intend to turn around the economy of the country, you must have a very coherent policy in terms of how you intend to use the land. And those kind of and that kind of policy now, when the president speaks, it gets you worried. And why does it get you worried also to a certain extent is that you also look at the person who is speaking. And you know that this person has had one or two cases involving grabbing of land. So you take it in that context and you begin to fear. And that is why he has to be extremely careful in the pronouncements that he makes, because otherwise then he confuses the country and the business community and our international partners as to exactly what is the policy of the government, because that is what we are looking out for in these initial stages.
But if you ask our court here, he will first say land is not a means of production as the first thing. If you ask me, land is my land because it's ancestral, because my grandfather gave it to my father for no good reason, but it is ours. So the Lockean theory that land, which is what led to colonization, by the way, they came and said, you guys are wasting a lot of land here. We have better tractors, and we can, it is mine because I've mingled my labor with it, I've improved it, and I've produced food. That is one theory of land ownership. And it is very controversial one because it is backed up by the doctrine of discovery and commercialization and thingification of land. But there is the other theory also that I think is very legitimate, that land is not a means of production. It can end up there, but it is my land because I inherited it from my grandfather. So mix those theories, but if you hail one theory, which has been part of our problem, because there are people who look at land as a commodity. But there are people who look at land as identity, inheritance, and there is that clash. And you see when the Constitution is trying to reconcile both with the community land versus the private land. And that could be the challenge, that as practitioner, if we only think of land as a commodity and a means of production, we miss the heritage aspect of land.
Let's hear what Dr. Nico wants to say. Karibu sana Daktari. We have the conversation around
traffic.
We'll find you.
Yes.
No problem. In fact, we have a birthday happening, so it's on you. The bill is on.
Let me give you a perspective as a nomadic pastoralist.
On land.
Yes, on land. So we nomads use land. I remember when we were doing the 2010 constitution and we went around, especially some of the pastoral areas, Kajiado, for example, and parts of Turkana and the rest. And they told us that, we came up with that theory. We tried to apply that theory that land is a means of production. And therefore you cannot just hold land, keep it, for, whenever you want. So the central question became land usage. How then do you use land? So the pastoralist and the nomadic pastor told us there is no such thing as fallow land. They were very categorical. Especially, I remember a discussion in Narok. They told us there is no such thing as fallow land or idle land.
That's what Amzungu calls it.
Yes, there is no such thing as idle land. As nomadic pastoralists, we use land to graze our animals this season. Then when we have overgrazed, we move to another part of the land. We allow that to grow. So
there's nothing idle.
The central question is land usage.
For who?
Yeah. As a nomad, I need my land to graze my animals or certain seasons. So that's still usage. It's a production on its own because it helps me produce my wealth.
Wow.
My animals, my camels must graze on the land. So that's why we are nomadic. So we use the land, even for you, when you till your land excessively, it loses its productivity.
Rotation, yes.
And that's why we came up with the idea of fertilizing the land. So you fertilize the land so that it can be productive. At some point, you leave it fallow or idle, as people might say, so that it can. So there's no such thing as a idle land.
But you see, the reason I like this a lot is... maybe I'm theorizing too much. Maybe I'm theorizing too much.
That's actually what I...
But I need to ground. But it's not just theory, because it's contestation of whose view of fallow land or production matters. Because remember, growing up, we were told the definition of pastoralist are people moving from a place to place, wandering in search of pasture. If you ask a pastoralist, they are not wandering. They exactly know where they are going. But if you ask people who are settled in agriculture and think the only meaningful use of land is agriculture and to grow flowers and whatever, they will tell you this is free land. And that is the thinking. You know, when you want free land, just go to Masai land, there's free land. But as our Dr. Aukot is explaining, it is very well defined in terms of use. And even the issue of the idea of title versus entitlement. By the way, I've supervised a dissertation on the same, because in this country, some people have title, might even be good title, but they don't have entitlement, because the way they acquired those land, and you are mentioning a few, you can still say, is this really their land? But sorry, go on.
But I think the fundamental question that came out during the constitutional debate was, how much land should you
maximum
keep for yourself?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I agree that there has to be some level of productivity. And if you read chapter 5, land and environment, look at the principles of land use. So there's an element to which that we must now question. Why do you own 1,000 acres of land and keeping it to yourself under some title, but this land ought to be able to produce for society, for example, if it's food production or whatever. And that question became very central. You see, among us as pastoralists, we don't have titles to our land. And that's why you'll never see, say in Turkana or Masai land, fencing and, of land. It's for common use, community use. So I can come and graze my animals, I go back. So there's no restriction on access to that land, because there's a common good that comes with the usage of that land to everyone. Exactly.
The Africa common.
Exactly. So when you have people who own thousands and thousands of acres of land, and you even wonder, okay, for what purpose? I even look at it from the perspective of just maybe an apartment. If you live in an apartment, how much of the space in your apartment do you use?
But let me ask you.
But the bigger question, Dr. is on the declarations of President William Ruto on land conflict. And at what point do you say, yes, do you consider land use and also consider the right to property? Because he's saying, if I have a conflict with you, EKURU, nimekuja kwako nipate plot yako iko hapo Lavington, nikaona imeang sana, ina fence, then nikajenga ghorofa. You are in London, having a good time in London. Then you arrive after 5 years, you find I'm renting out apartments. And so at that point, where do we differentiate your right to your property and also my right to the apartments? And he's saying that at that point you negotiate and have a win-win. So maybe the win-win would be, I give you 5 apartments or 10 apartments, you cede.
No, I think there's already an established principle in law called adverse possession. And
I said it, and what all these guys that I was off.
So, you see, I think we are losing the point, and we are losing it because we are theorizing
Too much.
land use.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question here was, when the president of the country wakes up and makes a pronouncement that legitimizes land grab.
That's not a good thing.
Yes. How can we even theorize and say that is a good thing? It does not. But are there other principles that operate in law? They are there. And that is why I'm saying that if then you already have law that is, there are no gaps in the law, it's well established. I mean, you have thousands and thousands of cases on adverse possession where there are those conflicts over. You should allow the judicial process to intervene on those, unless you're now coming up with a policy position as a government that this is what we want to see happening in land. And now what I was saying is that with regards to land as a means of production is the question of actually land usage. And that is why we have all these laws on planning and whatever, because it's about land use. Yeah. And then if as a country, if you want to grow, you must have proper and coherent policy on land use.
But you see, having said all this, why are we shy from tabling or retabling the Ndumu Commission report on irregular and illegal acquisition of land?
Yeah.
We must table it. And that will address some of the fundamental questions around land grabbing and all that kind of thing. Because, strictly speaking, if you look at, for example, the risk of sounding very unpopular amongst some quarters, land stealing in this country, strictly, The Kenyattas, the Mois, all the people, the provincial administration, ministers, strictly in that order. Whenever a DO was posted in whatever district, he is automatically given land. A DC, a provincial commissioner, the same thing. So we must retable the Ndungu Commission report on irregular and illegal allocation of land in this country. And implement it. So William Ruto making some of this pronouncement is running away from the real thing. Yeah. The elephant in the room is, why did we spend so much money in that Ndungu Commission to establish issues around land issues in this country? Why are we not implementing? The same thing with TJRC. So tuache tuache kalongolo.
And you see to add on and you see to add on that. And I think he should tell us what is his position, whether he will be bold enough to bear the Ndungu report, land report. Because if you look at currently, even the issue of the tea factories. Remember the commission on land said the land belonged to the Talai Kipsigis. But Unilever is there.
Yes.
And they are producing something that for most Kenyans can say are employing a number of Kenyans and earning us foreign exchange. So that then, look at the present comment in that context. The Talai, you are looking at it as the few bourgeoisies who are grabbing. I'm looking at the majority of people who are actually squatting. Yes. If you look at the cost.
The question of displacement from that land.
Yeah, development initiated displacement.
Yes.
So historical injustices. So the Talai have no land. The tea factories are sitting on their land. Won't that require negotiation? Because the Human Rights Commission, the Kenya Land Commission have already said that the lease is over for those multinationals. Now, the role of multinational and how much they contribute in the country. Now, that is in Kericho County. And we can go on and on. And then finally...
You can go to Murang'a too, where they are doing the pineapples.
Doctor, I agree with you. And you see... We are all probably saying the same thing. The question is this. Suppose you are saying that that land belongs to them, the lease is over. What do? Do you tell them now the lease is over, that you are now Talai, come and take over this land? You can't do that as a government, because you are, as a government, you're not just looking at that aspect alone. You're looking at also the message you're sending to investors, because you don't develop your country alone. Yeah, you develop your country with other people. So the question is that you need to have some sort of coherent policy on how you handle some of those things. Okay. If you look at it, and this is what I wanted to say, that there are so many issues with regards to squatters that actually this government needs to be sorting out. Yeah, if you just need to go to
this promise at the cost.
Yeah, at the cost there are massive issues with regards to squatters. If you go down here to this land that used to belong to, I think, is it the Mwindi who owns the land that
Mukuru
Kwanjenga, the land for Orbit, and there's been all that. There's been litigation and a court order that land goes back. Those are now the situations where you are now saying, yes, you are the landowner, yeah, but as the government, we need to engage with you, because what do we do with all these people who are set up here? And in some of those places, there are schools, there are hospitals, there are whatever. So in those instances, even though you have the title, and our law says that by virtue of this title, then you are entitled to this land. In those situations, it is inconceivable that you can actually say, let us evict these people.
But you see, let's put this into perspective, and let's constitutionalize this debate.
Then we move on from
that. You see, our law, our constitution speaks of reparation compensations. So when you relate the question of land and the enrichment of a few people, and the victims of displacement and unjust enrichment. You see, we are not even applying our constitutional principles. It's so fair enough. Let's grow tea in the Talai land, But see, they export this tea, they call it English tea. When I know in England, they can't even grow a single tree of tea, you know? But the people have been displaced. Somebody, a multinational corporation, is actually enriching itself in terms of billions and billions of US dollars. So what is it not about time we talk about compensation and reparation for those people? Look, let's draw examples. In Canada, or is it Toronto, for example, the mining companies, the moment they come and displace the so-called the Indians, they start with something called community partnership agreement. They recognize the fact that this is land that belongs to these people in terms of either their identity or usage. But we are going to mine a mineral here that will produce billions of Kenya shillings or dollars. So we must partner with this community. Australia is doing the same. Why aren't we doing it in Turkana where we've discovered oil? And you're saying that that land was idle. It's not idle. It was aggressive. In fact,
Before you move from the
so we
topic,
must be compensated.
maybe it's good to disclose. You know, I worked with Professor Naya, the special rapporteur for the indigenous people, for 5 years in the US on issue of indigenous land. Right now, I went to the African Commission on the case of the Kedong Maasai. So that is probably why I'm passionate about this. Because I saw the Maasai Agreement of 1896, whatever, the Anglo-Maasai, you know, they signed a treaty. And according to the treaty, Kedong was reserved for the Maasai. And so I am there negotiating, I'm there saying, if we go by the treaty, the Kedong, actually, according to the treaty that the British court in 1913, in the case of Olenjogu, said that this is a valid treaty, then the Kedong part belongs to the Maasai. But remember, it was taken by those companies, and now there is the government project that was going on. So I was able to get orders against that for the Kitet clan, who are saying this is our land. Yes, we don't have a title. And you see the reason that it becomes more complicated is that, you know, under the international law, you saw the case of the Ogiek, you saw the case of the people from Baringo, that indigenous community. That they were able to say that the traditional or customary land use is a title. So the people who oppress you and take your land, you cannot say because they didn't give you a paper called title, therefore you don't have a title to your land. So the international law and the customary international law is actually saying the traditional land ownership is already a title. So there is contestation there between the title from the land officers and the traditional. Finally, the reason why I'm thinking this debate is so broad is that you know that this is the last leap of liberation even in South Africa. That the constitution did not go far enough. But not even the constitution, the implementation. That the Africans there are waking up and saying, you have heard of Malemba. And all the South Africans saying, no. Should those who own huge tract of land, and whether the president had power to allocate those lands, which some of them he did as it's being described, to themselves, to their cronies and whatever. Should we sit here pretty and just talk of reform and leave this land in their hands? And if we are to take them, should we compensate them? So it is a very timely and contemporary issue on the issue of land in South Africa. And you know our constitution are very similar. Finally, I don't see anything off because the constitution and one of the basic principles and even our value is social justice. You know what social justice is? It means that we are going to lean backward to help the poor, to help the vulnerable over the very powerful. And I think that is where court have not been bold, that as our court is saying, because the element of social justice as one of our values. social justice is very much up there, that we are not just neutral. So how did you acquire the 1,000 pieces of land? Which ancestor of yours stayed there that inherited in Taita the 1,000 acres? Those questions must be asked, and I think that we must...
We talk, because this issue is very sensitive. We must give as many examples as possible. I am currently dealing with a case of a clan. It's called Mbaria Tutua from Kabete here. You know, all that land where now, for example, Kabete Ngombe or Lower Kabete occupies, up to the parts of Westlands, actually was owned by a clan called Mbari Yatutua. And if you look at the colon, there's a report by the colonialists that actually lists claims to land. So we cannot wish away the idea of people claiming land. And Mbari Yatutua, most people do not know, they started claiming their land in 1949.
Oh, okay.
1949 up to date. So one of the facilitators of displacement of people in land is the government of the day. That time it was a colonial administration. They gave it to some Mzungu called Cooper. How did he acquire that? He displaced because he used administration. And if you look at, for example, the National Land Commission Act, it's very clear. It goes back, remember, and say, okay, let's address a historical injustice. But our government is not willing. And I think if William Ruto really wants to succeed in a way, he must address this issue of land. I've said it before, even in this show. He should even, live by example. Give back Weston. Even donate it to that school or
that would be good. Though Weston is a baby compared to...
I know, but I'm saying, but see, he's also been called Arab Mashamba. So I think as the president...
You have to set the tone.
Yeah. If I was President William Ruto today, I'll give back Weston.
I think so.
After all, he doesn't need it. We are going to take care of him anyway until he...
And we should call it witch hunt if he goes after the people who want the thousands
but I think on condition, everybody else returns.
Gives out the land.
That would be fair.
And we go back to 1965 when they started displacing people and taking them to Mpeketoni and Mono.
Ojwang said it was Mpekatoni. Moving on very quickly. He called to the CAS conversation. And the LSK and the president is going to court to challenge or to stop the PSC, Public Service Commission, from setting the office of the chief administrative secretaries. Remember, they'd been told to go and do public participation. So they have said, guys, we came, we talked to these gentlemen and ladies, and now we are back and we are ready for the offices. And LSK is saying, no, man, you got to chill. Theuri, what's cooking? What's popping there?
Because we filed the case as the Law Society, we might be a little bit constrained in that discussion because we have to respect the processes that are going in court. So I may not be able to say so
without
much.
Going into the merits and demerits, but maybe you can just give us an...
The position is that the court has stopped the establishment of those offices. Two, I think the factual position is that we know public service has also put out a notice inviting applicants for the position. That is something that is probably going to be discussed at another forum. But the broad, maybe, and these are now the questions that the court would be, we will be asking the court to look into, is the aspect of public participation. And there are several decisions from the courts that talk to what public participation ought to be. There is no prescription, but there is a need to give the public information that then enables them to participate effectively in that process. And that is what essentially we are challenging, because if you say you want to establish an office is an office, but it becomes complete when it has personnel. So how many people do you intend to hire in terms of the principal ones and the support system? What is the financial cost of establishing the office? What is the grading level, because when we look at the law, this is what the law says, Section 27 of the Public Service Commission Act, that before you establish an office, upon receipt of a request, these are the considerations that you're supposed to look into. And the public participation is a requirement under the Constitution and under the Public Service Act. So what it means is that when you are conducting public participation, you must give the public that information for them now to say, okay, so you're establishing this office, this is what they are going to do, and even what you call a workload analysis. If you look at some of the functions, you have to be sure that this function is not being performed by somebody else, so that you are avoiding duplication of duties. So there was that need for you to see this office being created. This is the workload analysis. This is how we are looking at it. And this is where we are grading it, because we all understand our Constitution talks about permanent secretaries, cabinet secretaries. It designates certain roles. This is a public office being created between those two positions. So some sort of information and the work that these people are supposed to ought to be given, so that when you look at it, you are able to then consume that information, to be well informed, and then you give feedback and say, yes, we think that this office is good, the financial impact of the office. And you know, there's always this question of, and every other time you are looking at salaries, there's always the question of, what does it impact on the national compensation bill and public relation and an employee relationship? So when you see this always comes out in any negotiations for increase of salary. You say, if we increase this, our national compensation bill increases to this much, and it forces other people who are almost of the same category to start agitating for an increase in their salary, and we get to. So as a country, when we are speaking about, prosperity measures, austerity measures, and every other thing, it is necessary that all that information is given, and that is the argument that we'll be trying to persuade the courts to look at, and that is what our petition is looking at generally.
Mr. President, let me tell you, let's be very brutally honest here. You know, in this show, we call it Sharia Wiki, we also take time to point Kenyans to the right provisions of the law. Now, for me, I do not hesitate to say that this is an attempt to amend the Constitution through the back door and affect the structure of government, because CAS is an expansion of the cabinet. And if you look at, look at Article 255, how we amend our Constitution, Article 255, 256, and 257. Whenever you attempt to affect the structure of government or parliament, you must go to the people in a referendum. William Ruto is actually expanding the executive through presidential fiat or power. And it's an attempt to bring back BBI, the Building Bridges Initiative, through the back door. Now, why do I say that? Let's refer Kenyans to the functions of the president, and they are contained in Article 132 of the Constitution of Kenya. Article 132 lists the function of the president, but more specific to this particular issue of CAS, I believe the president is trying to invoke the provisions of sub-article 4, where he says the president may perform any other executive function provided for in this Constitution. So it must be provided for in this Constitution. And like Theuri has said, the Constitution speaks of cabinet secretaries and principal secretaries. So if he may perform any function provided for in this Constitution or in the national legislation, and except as otherwise provided for in this Constitution, may, it's discretionary, those are the words, may establish an office in the public service in accordance with the recommendation of the Public Service Commission. And remember, in the same article, 132, there is reference to Article 10, National Values and Principles of Governance, one of those national values and principles of governance is public participation. And the question then should be to Kenyans, do we really need this office? Just maybe to digress kidogo, I followed Raila's, speak to the boda and bunge la wananchi the other day, where he says that he challenged the government. If Rigathi Gachagua indeed said that they only inherited 93 million Kenya shillings from Treasury, but ended up spending 200 million in the overseas trips that William Ruto is now doing, that exactly goes against the hustler narrative. You cannot be a hustler and live largesse, and live big, spend big. Now, why are you creating this office? I mean, like Theuri has ably pointed out, you have to look at the financial implication of this office. And it also goes against the public finance, chapter, Article 201 in particular, prudent use of finances in this country. So is that really a prudent use? And for me, I'm not afraid to say William Ruto is trying to reward his political cronies and friends through these chief administrative secretaries. If that is the case, honestly, and I asked this question yesterday, and I can see it's generating a lot of debate on Twitter. If it's about rewarding political cronies, which I think is a fact here, then how will he reward the 7.2 million Kenyans who voted for him? How will he reward the 50 million Kenyans who actually look up to him as the president? I think we need to have a lean government. The constitution is very clear. Not fewer than 14 ministries, not more than 22. Now, if you're actually expanding that just by executive action or whatever, and you see there's a lot of lies here. Kidogo, we're told, chief administrative secretary positions are being created. Shortly, even before we participate in it, there's an advert on it. And I think this administration of William Ruto is starting on the wrong footing, in my view. First, follow the law. And I'm also very uncomfortable with the statement he made the other day that, we don't exist to obey the law. The law exists to serve us. It is the opposite. A very, very wrong example he's giving as a president. And I think what happens if today he wakes up and says, let's suspend the Constitution of Kenya? That's a very dangerous trend. So I think, and it's possible. Constitution have been suspended before. Well, he can come and do a Kagame on us and say, the people of Rwanda, of Kenya have said, I should continue for another third term. This trend. So let's follow the law. Mm-hmm. If you really want to establish this office, follow the law. The law says to you, you may. It's very discretionary. Mm-hmm. But also as a person who came into public office, into this powerful position based on the fact that we are hustlers, we are struggling, then also look at the economic context of our country. Mm-hmm. Can we afford it? We cannot. Not at this time, because there is no shortage. Mm-hmm. This is basically, when we did the Constitution of Kenya, Kenyans said, do away with this assistant minister thing. Mm-hmm. It's creating power struggle in the effective running of ministries. When you bring in a chief administrative secretary, actually he's an assistant minister. It's creating a lot of overlaps in terms of functions and power. Look at the awkward situation Mudavadi and Rigathi Gachagua find themselves in. It's a reality. But see, just because you want to appease your political friends, so you give them a position. I mean, at the end of the day, they end up not serving the public. An office must be able to effectively serve the people of Kenya. If not, we don't need it. In fact, we need to reduce this government.
Ojwang, what are your thoughts on the same?
As I think, as Dr. Aukot and even Theuri have said, 234 says functions and power of Public Service Commission to include the commission shall A, subject to the confirmation and legislation, establish and abolish offices in public service. So, government is a living organism. And a living organism is not frozen to the 2010. That is why the Constitution, realizing that there could be a need for re-engineering, said that the Public Service Commission can abolish or establish offices in public service. I think not every day, but so often, ministerial department submit request and propose for establishment of public service offices. I saw the advert. There was the job description was given, what they are going to do, the title, the job group, and details. There was an invitation for public participation on the same. Now, we probably are in a crossroad. You know, there's a time you can be broke, and then you decide, as a broke person, now, from now, I'm not even going to polish my shoes. I'm going to live like a broke person. But there is because things are tough. And that is and it appears to everybody that mambo imekuwa ngumu kweli. Unaona venye hiyo shati imekauka. Look at the collar. So that is visible. But there is also another way of saying there is a minimum that even though things are tough, we must function and produce and yield more. So the other one is so obvious and it looks like a pity party. So president, because things are tough, probably walk to Ethiopia, though it will take 3 months or drive. It might be efficient going there on a jet and coming the same day. Without spending.
Things are tough.
But for visibility, and there are politicians who have done it for image, cycle to work, so that people can see, wow, a very humble servant of God. Damn it, use a donkey to go to work. Then we say this is the servant, the people's servant. But I think my point is that whether the Constitution gives that room, there is a place for that debate, whether we need it, but it has been defined what they are going to do, this CAS. But whether, because we are now staying in difficult time, if you go to our embassy, you shouldn't find tea. We should now feed people porridge. Or there is some minimum, irreducible minimum, that here we can't go this low. Even as we are trying to use these offices to plan. I think human beings are visual people. And I don't blame myself. You know, when I'm suffering, I want to see people also suffering. I want to see midomo imekauka. But I think as a government, there are things that it must put in place in order to serve us. And according to the president, and the Constitution give him that leeway, I believe that some of those things include, I need only 24 people. This, by the way, there are not many. It's only 24, ladies and gentlemen.
Why are you getting 24?
I thought from the number, I thought there are 24.
Where?
Because I don't think they can be
look,
more.
Look at the advert. Yeah. The advert doesn't say how many.
Yeah, but can they be more than the number of ministries?
No, but if you don't say the establishment, it basically means the person appointing can decide how many he wants.
But see, Doc, why are you trying to justify the creation of this office, even if the law says that, while at the same time you are saying ni kubaya? You know, you cannot polish your shoes. So for me as a country, I'm looking at other bigger issues. Pressing issues. For example, if you look at the collective bargaining agreements with say nurses, doctors, they have not been settled up to now. I mean, is that prudent use of our resources, of our money? I will tend to think there is really no shortage, and that's why you need to go back to the people of Kenya and say, okay, do we really need this public office called Chief Administrative Secretary? Even if you try to justify with the functions they are going to do, is there a shortage currently in the delivery of services?
Within the ministry?
Listen, I come from Kapedo, where we are being killed every other day. Just the other weekend, we went to bury our sister, Mary. Yeah. And for me, I look at, for example, Article 6 of the Constitution of Kenya, sub-Article 3, where a national organ must devolve its services to each and every part of the Republic of Kenya. Now, I look at security. as a service. Okay? And this service has not been devolved to the people of Kapedo na Peyton ward, for example. And that's why people are being shot every other day. Now, even before we devolve that function of security, a service,
the human security,
to the people, to every part of the Republic of Kenya, why are we creating other offices? That, for me, is the context within which we must have this debate. And the creation of this office must be robust. It must go to the people of Kenya. Let the people of Kenya say, really, do we really need this office? And let's look at the expenditure. We are already struggling with the fact that we have got a huge national debt of about 11 trillion Kenya shillings right now as we speak.
Oh, wow.
We are not even addressing how are we going to restructure this debt so that we are able to make it easy. You know? So why are we spending money that we don't have? Because creation of these offices means expenditure on public money. In fact, there is no such thing as, like somebody said, there is no such thing as government-funded projects or expenditure. It is taxpayers funded. You know, and therefore, this question of creating this office must relate to you personally, Doc. As you toil teaching those people at Nazarene University, yeah, and you do toil, and you get taxed, it is your taxes.
It's probably not well remunerated.
Not well remunerated. I would rather pay you handsomely because you are investing in the development of this country through education. Some of these fellows who will come and see us, and I don't mean any bad, are just politicians because they were shouting and dancing on the rallies and the podiums. Now they're being given a position. Look,
And I've said that's also toiling.
Yes, and look at it this way. We are encouraging the situation where we are already giving people jobs, people who already have jobs, other jobs. There are about 70% unemployment in this country. When President Ruto, for example, asks, say, someone like Wetangula, Kipchumba Murkomen, they're all my friends, that, you know, you, wachana na hiyo kazi. And the people of Kenya employed them in Bungoma, in Elgeyo Marakwet. They were employed, you know. Now you're telling them, you know, it's like laughing at those people, saying that, you know, you, regardless of the choices you made, you know, me, I'm going to give these guys a job. Then you are subjecting us to another expenditure, because remember, the by-election will cost us about another $500 million. Yeah. Kenya shillings. So really, I think that's the context within which we must discuss this issue. Whether the law gives that leeway or not, we are not.
Socio-legal.
Yes, we need to look at the social, legal, but also the economic aspect of these positions. Really, do we need them? I think that's the question that really we must ask.
See the challenge I'm having, Doc. I have similar feeling that it might end up with politicians. Of course. But people have not even put application. How can we say with certainty, unless you have become a son of prophet of late, that you know if you go to politicians, you know they will not produce, you know it is a rip-off, and it's the only advertisement that is out there. You're a son of prophet.
Are you in Kenya?
I am.
You know, like, I think it was Chinua Achebe, I think in Things Fall Apart, that said that, you know, is it Chinua Achebe? I can't remember. Anyway, if a woman is pregnant, you don't go around saying that I'm pregnant, because you can all see it. Or I think it in Things Fall Apart, he said that a toad does not run in broad daylight for nothing, for no reason at all. We can see, you know. So we can already see the choreography. So, Daktari, stop being philosophical here. Let's just be brutally honest about our country. I don't think we can afford this position right now. And we know, and trust me, you know, in this show, we prophesy sometimes. I bet you. I bet you. At the very least, maybe 50% of those positions, maybe, will go to the politician, if not 100%. People in the political camp.
Would you consider yourself a politician? You know, Dr. Aukot, you have run for presidency.
Yes.
For others, you are a politician. Yes, but you are not only a politician.
Yeah.
And I think there is a way we talk of politicians like they are aliens, because I have tried run for a political office once. So am I a politician? Yeah. So am I a politician? So we talk of politicians as if they are those there's othering here. Because if you talk of, for example, Murkomen, he's a lawyer.
Yes.
He's also looking for political office. He was leading majority in parliament. But when we take one label, because this is how stereotype works, you take one negative aspect of a group, you generalize it, then you trumpet it as the truth about that group. Politicians, and this is, we did in English, how do you handle a problem like Maria? So it's assumption that Maria is a problem, and how do you handle it? So right now, we have problematized that one, there's a group called politicians, and they are only politicians. If Aukot becomes CAS, who have run as a president and a politician on his own rights and has not stopped doing what he does very well as a legal scholar, but he's a politician and we tag him with that level. We can even kill him because he's now a politician.
Doc, a quick rejoinder. You're a teacher of law, and you know this very well, and so is my president here. In law, we say context is everything. Without context, you cannot even, legalize or think. So context is everything. The question, a politician narrative has become an issue in our lingua, in our political lingua in Kenya, is because the politicians have actually failed this country. They are not serving. And that's one of the geniuses of Kenya's constitution, as you know, is chapter 6. Leadership and integrity. The fact that Kenyans wanted a certain type and character of leadership. But our political leadership has failed us over the decades. And that's why Kenyans even said, but even if you look at the Article 132, it's clear that cabinet shall not consist of members of parliament. So, it says that. It says in black and white. So, whether I resign or not, you're actually a member of parliament, but you're going into cabinet. You're actually violating the constitution. You're the same person.
You close it for us.
No, I think I love what I'm hearing, and it's essentially perhaps maybe the question that did we then have sufficient information from that advert to be able to engage in this kind of discussion, because you can see Aukot is coming from a very philosophical what is the cost? We are all juggling with it. It might be that the cost is so little that we would have absorbed it, or the cost is so astronomical that perhaps we would have said we can't adopt it. And also from whatever Dr. is saying, that the power to create the office is there and all those things, which is true. I mean, because the request is actually based on an Article 132, which the president can do so. But when you receive the request from the president, you then have to subject it to public participation. But the public participation, are you obligated to give them all this information, including the fact that, yes, we've received this request, yes, we want to establish, and we want to establish it in this number, and all those things. And that is what I was saying, Dr. That in establishing an office in the public service, there must be a discussion in terms of the benefits and the implications. Yes, and you cannot have that discussion without the information on all that. So that if you engage in public participation without that information to the public, then it is not serving. It's cosmetic, and therefore does not meet the requirements of the Constitution and our law, as has been interpreted severally by the courts, and I think those are now would be the arguments that will probably be playing out before the
Just so that people don't misunderstand us, we are not saying the president cannot invoke this power. It's a function of the president under 132. I think the question is, let's look at the whole debate around it. I mean, questions of to do with the economy. Is it a prudent use of our resources? Do we really need this office? What are the shortfalls in the specific ministries right now in terms of delivery of service to the people of Kenya? And I think, yes, he has made this request, but you can already see they have jumped the gun. the request may have been made, already they are putting an advert. Where did you see Public Service Commission, for example, hold public participation?
There was a window for that.
Where, when?
Let's just be honest with sometimes what we know public participation
Should be.
to be. Ordinarily, you ask people to give you memorandum. And then after you have received memorandum, you invite the people who have given you memorandum to make a presentation before you. And that is how every other, it happens all the time. I am called to Bunge all the time. Every time we give whatever. They invite us and then they say, we explain. Sometimes they say no, sometimes they say
NSK didn't give a memorandum.
we didn't. But
You are waiting to be called.
I'm saying I don't want to discuss this particular issue because it is in court. But we are basically saying that what do we know public participation to be?
To constitute.
No, but you see, President, because even the Supreme Court finally felt, and you remember Chief Justice Ndung coming out clearly to say there's been a lot of confusion on the threshold of public participation. I don't know whether they were able to finally do a justice.
There is no prescription
Right.
on how public
it's
participation
contextual.
should be conducted. But at least there is consensus. Yeah, there is consensus that it must be
meaningful, not ritual.
Yes,
and that
it's
is
not
the case.
ritualistic. It must be meaningful.
Yeah.
For any public participation to be meaningful, information
Is key. And a right to information.
Yes,
and all that.
so that you are given the information and you're told this is what we want.
But is public participation merely the sending of memoranda? Because me, I can tell you my people from Todonyang who cannot even access a computer. They were not given that chance. Because there is already a process established in this country on how people participate publicly on an issue. For example, if you look at the TJRC report, we saw the commission go around at least the country. The committee of experts, we saw them at least go around the country soliciting for views and even asking people. So for me, there has to be a certain threshold of what public participation actually
meaningful
means.
public participation.
Meaningful
but you
public
see, those
participation.
ones, there was a legal provision for that and a budget for that. Now, right now, look at the context that.
Are you saying PSC does not have a budget doc?
PSC, yes.
Or rather, let us look at it this way. If
We are talking of saving money, isn't it?
Then let's not even have this
So we
position.
spend money to save money.
No. Suppose the university where you work in wants to change its curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Stakeholders must come.
And it is engaging in public participation. It may not invite the ordinary members of the public because they may not have, that perhaps expertise
Even
to engage on, curriculum development and this and this. But for example, because it's law, you have to call the Law Society. You have to call other teachers of law from other universities and whatever, because they have a specialized knowledge and they are able then to engage with you on this aspect. So then the question then becomes, and this is what is always looked at. These are the parameters that the court always looks at. What was in context? Yeah. So you are seeking information in what context? Who did you seek that information from? You may have sought it from the public, but for example, did you seek it from maybe the Institute of Economic Affairs, who would have told you that with this amount, with this is what it will translate to. Other experts in terms of formation of public bodies, be it SRC, be it whatever, why are they consulted? What did they say about? So those are the questions that the general parameters that.
And I think, as Mr. President has articulated, for me, this is about the government of Kenya actually expanding the structure of the executive. In my view, I've not read the LSK petition, but in my view, there has to be a certain degree to which you have actually consulted, if not the entire country, but at least probably even half the country.
Yeah, maybe that.
At least let's see you out there. Because see, look at BBI. When BBI was attempting to amend the Constitution of Kenya, we saw them go almost all the 47 counties. So you can say at least there was some meaningful participation. And what the BBI even did, they actually produced a report I would have loved to see PSC, first of all, publish a report from even the memoranda or the views they have received from Kenyans and say, this is what Kenyans have said. When we were doing the constitution of this country, we produce a report every other time we consulted. And we ask Kenyans, okay, you have time, can you now comment on this report, do this? So this one, hii ni chini ya maji.
I think in my view, the civic engagement, because we are civic, Republican, democratic constitution, all those principles require public participation. And meaningful public participation should not just be a ritual. But we might be also assuming that within Public Service Commission, they don't have accountants, they don't have economists, so that it wasn't costed. Those could be assumptions. And then I think that even courts right now give much need to written submission rather than oral. Sometimes oral I've found them to be just mere shows. But written submission is very important. Finally, this is similar, Dr. Aukot, to your case on the Third Way Alliance, when you took the president to court, when he hired the task force on Building Bridges initiative. And you said, remember here, the president hired, not even going through Public Service Commission. And you said, surely, look at the Constitution. There is expectation. They are going to take in taxpayers' money. Nobody is telling us how much they are earning. And you know, court disagreed with you. At least to that extent, that they only messed up when they started amending the Constitution. But the court said, look at the president's power and role to look at the whole country and surely to govern. And that will mean that if a president decides to pick a team, even not going through Public Service Commission, establish them, pay them to go around collecting views, we think that is okay.
He doesn't have his money.
No, but still the court disagreed with you. In the Third Way Alliance case, they disagreed with you. Judge Muita, who is usually very keen on this issue, said, I think the president, we will be choking the president.
You said actually we cannot tie the president's hands. So
I'm not a son of prophet, but I anticipate from that jurisprudence there will be a lot of similarity in what does it mean that the president can do, especially if the Constitution allows them, even though, and so I tie them with the case of GMO, for example. To what extent will court sit on a policy issue to say, because I know the threshold, that the threshold is unless it's unreasonable. Unless it's unreasonable, and if it is constitutional, court cannot turn to be the policy makers of this country. Remember, still, we threw down the principle of separation of power because it's about legality and constitutionalism. But still, there is the benchmark that the executive manages the affairs of this country. So for court to sit and say, I would love to, but I would not be worried if I was on the opposite side of the president on this one. Because I feel you can't tie president's hands.
I remember asking Muita and even Justice Mativo, if he said that we cannot tie the president's hand because he enjoys these powers and function on the Constitution, what if he wakes up one day and declares that we don't need a judiciary? You see, so there are certain safeguards. You must even the president himself in exercising that power has to be. He has to find what is the common good for society. Okay, and for me that was our argument. Although the judge did not agree with us, and we told him. I remember addressing.
But don't you see similarity with this case?
No. I think what Dr. you're trying to do is sort of play an extremely dangerous game. But let me say this.
That sounds painful. It's extreme and it's dangerous.
Prof here, I think at some point has given up on this country. He said that let
it's not my baby.
I think he said in this show, this guy wanted to watch.
No, I've lowered my expectation to survive. You see how I'm thriving.
The general terrain is that the Constitution still remains the supreme.
Ground norm.
Yes. So even when it gives certain powers, it also prescribes how those powers must be used. And so therefore, there will always be an examination all the time as to whether the way those powers have been exercised is within the four corners of the Constitution, and where it is found that there's been an infraction, then the court will always give an appropriate remedy. So the issue is that when certain powers have been given to whoever it has been given, then they must be exercised within the Constitution. So if you look at Public Service Commission set up in the Constitution, the principles in terms of how it must exercise its power are actually set out in the yes, and they are bound by the Constitution itself, to promote and uphold the values of the Constitution. And I think it should worry us, for example, that the Public Service Commission receives applications for cabinet secretaries. It publishes a notice saying we have shortlisted 477, and then a day thereafter takes an about turn and says, we realized we did not include youth and persons with disabilities, so therefore, and minorities, so therefore we are adding another 108. And we say, that's fine, all that.
Move on.
I mean, accept that and move on. You understand? So if as citizens who are law-abiding citizens and under an obligation in the Constitution to uphold the Constitution.
Yeah.
There are certain things when you see them happening, you have to really become extremely skeptical, and especially when you now look at the list and you are unable to see the youth. You are unable, there is a sprinkling of youth, there is a sprinkling of persons with disabilities, there is a sprinkling of marginalized people.
In other words, the youth and persons with disabilities are just being used as a decoration. They're just they are political flower girls in this game. They don't really mean to.
But the Constitution requires that.
It requires, but I'm saying
so shouldn't it worry you? And this is even perhaps the question that you were asking about the DPP. Shouldn't it worry you that before you take a decision, the Constitution is very explicit that you need to look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So by the time PSC is shortlisting, the requirements that are on their mind are all those considerations, because the Constitution requires them to do that. So when they issue a list and then they say, no, sorry, it looks like we forgot persons with disabilities and the youth and whatever. Now we are giving another list to include them. Should we really should we just really accept it?
Mr. President.
The DPP says, and you remember those blue press releases that used to come, that I have looked at the evidence, I have seen that so-and-so did this is on the basis of all this analysis. I have made the decision to charge. And then he comes 3 years or 4 years or 5 years later. Then he says, there was not enough evidence for me to charge this person. And then we are required to clap and say, well, bravo, an injustice has been avoided. I mean, surely
Mr.
we need to raise our conscience to a certain level to say that certain things are unacceptable.
I did not know that Dr. Ojwang, Prof, had actually migrated out of Kenya. Because
I think he needs to
moved to another planet because the choreography with which our public affairs are being handled, Doc, is so obvious.
It's actually
Look at, for example, the speed with which DPP is dropping cases. Sure.
And that's what you're actually heading to.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It should speak obviously to us that this is this is all. This thing is just choreographed. I mean, like Prezo here has explained. When the DCI investigates a crime, they do the statements and all that. Then they send the file to DPP. DPP then analyzes and then recommends charge. As a lawyer, because he looks at the evidence, the veracity of that evidence and all those things, then sends the file back to DCI and say, now you can charge this person, go and arrest and bring. So all of a sudden, after, like you said, after 4 years, 5 years, charges are being dropped. We don't have sufficient evidence. What the hell have you been sitting on that file for all these years? And I think, Doc, like Theory has said, we need to rise up. I mean, we need to heighten our consciousness in terms of the way things are being run in this country. And we cannot also just pretend.
Consciousness is shared.
That's there is defense.
No, not my defense.
If I don't defend,
it's not my
I think you'll be accused.
There's nothing to defend.
Defend your conscience.
Or has Prof been promised one of these positions because
Prof is happy being a teacher. Prof is a happy teacher. Prof is a happy teacher, but anyway. Prof,
By the way, that's not funny.
before
Me, I'm a happy child, even from my childhood. From my childhood.
I want you to comment in the context of a post here from Abbas Njuguna. And Abbas Njuguna is saying, let's not forget we have been slapped with a fine of 1.3 billion for defaulting SGR loan by China. Wow. 1.3 billion for defaulting. So really, I mean, I think that's the context within which we must discuss even the creation of these public offices.
Right.
We have so much, to handle. As people from Turkana bleeding every day, northern Kenya. But right now there is a lot of hunger and famine.
Let's not even talk about the debt. The youth bulge in this country and the levels of unemployment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look at every day from my members of the society, from the younger members of the LSK, they are agitating for better remuneration, better terms of service, better conditions of employment. And the market is so skewed because, there are very few opportunities. So the level of unemployment, underemployment, those are now the things that should be the primal focus and should be preoccupying our time. How do we create opportunities for the youth? Yeah. How do we broaden the services and expand and create opportunities for the vulnerable in society, who, by the way, have done everything that they are required to do. They have gone to school, their fathers have toiled, they have sold land, they have taken loans so that they can educate them. And what is the primary responsibility of the government? Is to create opportunities for these people to thrive. But what is the government doing? It is creating opportunities to reward an elite and a political cronies. Yeah. So if we get to a point where we say that is acceptable, when we have a government that came into office on the promise that it is going to deal with the downtrodden, have we seen any concrete action towards dealing with the downtrodden? And it's a question of messaging. What are you communicating and prioritizing? That if, as a government, the first order of business is to bloat
the government,
actually to constrict the taxes that you are collecting, which taxes are supposed to go towards the provision of basic services. Yeah, you are creating another avenue for consumption of those taxes. Yeah, for an office that has whose direct economic return is not is not visible. So those should be the questions that really we should be grappling with.
Right. Moving to DPP.
No, the first order of business was swearing in of judges. Let us be true. Was swearing in those judges who were left behind.
So
That was the first order of business.
Let me tell you.
The first order of business.
Listen.
I'm
Whatever.
giving you the order of business.
Listen.
Yeah.
You know. There's one thing.
I think Doc should be hired as a
Professor
spokesperson.
you know there are still positions which are open. And one of them is the government spin master.
Unless I'm using the word, the first order of business, literally. I'm giving you the business in order.
Dr. Joang, what
It
you're
wasn't the
saying,
hiring of CAS.
what you're saying, Dr. Joang, is this, yeah?
This came 2 weeks later.
Look here, what you're saying is this, yeah? That
let me
it is critical to also understand one thing.
Okay.
That sometimes and people preach water and they take wine. So
Out of respect for Jesus' first miracle. Now.
Yes. So what do you do? You come and say, these judges have been stopped from whatever, So what is it? PR. Let me swear them in. But then look at what is coming out of
Did you
the court.
congratulate them?
Of course I did, and I was there. But are you seeing what is happening in these courts?
Yeah, the main things.
You understand? So you can say that
Drop
what he
it like
did,
it's hot.
Yeah, what he did was for the good of the judiciary. But everyone is now beginning to wonder: was this an attempt to now bring the judiciary into a closer so that it can be manipulated? And you see, those are valid concerns. Yeah, what we should and I think what we are saying here is that our trust should be in the institutions that have been developed by the Constitution, because these institutions were not put in the Constitution for a cosmetic value. They are supposed to serve a certain purpose, and the purpose is one, public good, and secondly, to check and ensure and infuse, the views of the public, and then to ensure that we have good governance. And so when you are in charge of a constitutional commission, your first and true constant companion is the Constitution. So everything that you do must conform with the Constitution.
But most importantly, with the people.
Yes.
Most importantly, with the people. Remember, Article 1 is very categorical. Sovereign authority.
It's the people.
Yeah, this Constitution is meant, I've not answered.
Now you can defend it.
Because no, it's not. Because you don't even want me to follow the first order of business, because I was giving you the chronological order of business. You don't want that. But you see the challenge I'm having. We are also a country which like to abbreviate a lot. We want to talk of China loans, but we don't want to talk of who put us into them, because it's not convenient. We want to talk of how bad things are and blame it on a 2 weeks baby. That this home is terrible, this home is going the dinosaurus route. Ni huyu mtoto alizaliwa last week. You are the cause. From the way you are crying, I'm seeing you are up to no good.
Unfortunately, Doc, the Constitution says government enjoys perpetual.
No.
Yes.
It does.
So the moment you are sworn in, the problems of the government yesterday before you are sworn in are your problems.
No, they are your problems.
Yeah, so you are in the deep end. You are in the deep end from day one.
And in any case, the baby you are saying is not really a baby. It had been born. It's already 10 years old, because you're not telling us. So stop lying to us here that this baby is new.
Did you see Gashagwa in the...
It's like
3 weeks.
Wait.
No, let us be serious sometimes.
I think you guys are being unfair to him. You guys are being unfair.
It's like you are talking. It's now like you telling me that I treat Dr. Ojwang, a law professor, like a law intern, legal intern. No. He already a qualified surgeon, administer the injection. So these people are not new in this government. They have been there. Gachagua, yes, was not in executive, but he was in parliament.
So let's see what he can
do. So listen.
Let us give Gachagua.
These are not newcomers. Gachagua is not a stranger in State House.
Is he?
He's not. Was he not Uhuru's PA?
But
Yeah, so, you know, PA is not a constitutional office. So he knows. No, PA, you know very well.
Let's give a minute to Prof. Let's give a minute to Prof. Let's allow Prof to. Let's give a minute to Prof.
So PA is not a constitutional office, but Deputy President is a constitutional office. Yes. So the challenge we are having.
Let's give Prof a minute. Let's give you guys unfair. I need to protect Prof. I need to protect Prof.
They like to. You know, the person who removed the putting of mask. I usually used to enjoy when people are smoothering in those masks and not talking a lot, because we like to abbreviate a lot. So we want to talk of that, but not the cause of it. We are scared of one thing that is coming. There is inquiry on state capture. And that state capture, guys, will fix all this. It will, within it, check even how DCI have been operating, because it is part of state capture. If these cases are being dropped like it is hot, there's a song like that, drop it like it's hot, then the answer and the solution lies on the inquiry on state capture. The issue of our debt lies on the issue of state capture. And if we are solution-oriented, then what we should say is that Dr. Ruto, the president, bring in the inquiry on state capture. Because to me, that is where all this misalignment that we are pointing, and it's a glossary list, it's long, will lie. But finally, I think that the direction we were taking was not a good one as a country. And it is clear, because the wrong direction. The wrong direction. It's not even in terms of northwest. It's just the wrong direction. And that no, it is directionless.
Whatever it's going, it's wrong.
It is directionless direction. And so that directionless direction that we saw up to 2 weeks ago, 3, maybe 4. Was very bad. Gentlemen. So the cabinet had been vetted.
Doc, you know, I think in England they say the king is dead, long live the king. So I have news for you. State capture is dead, long live state capture.
What does that mean?
It means that we are actually in state capture as we are speaking right now.
In fact,
we are perfecting it.
Yeah. And you guys are agents in it? I'm not going to participate in state capture.
But
because to me, that is the problem.
It is ongoing. It is ongoing, Prof, and it is what you're defending.
Yes.
No, you see. No, Prof, may God save us from labels. No, may God save us from our labels.
But you started the narrative of
labeling.
No, Prof, you started it. Prof, let's do this. I don't think we need another inquiry in this country to establish what is the problem in Kenya.
Why are you nervous about it?
Wait, I'm not nervous. I'm not nervous about it. I'm just telling you, we have established the many wrongs in this country. What we are asking right now, this two-week baby, although it's 2 months that you're defending, please implement already the wrongs that we have since established.
Implement the wrongs.
No, I mean, address the wrongs that we have already since established. Start even with TJRC. We started with the question of land. The Nungu Commission report is there. There are many, many other inquiries. The Kiumi Commission, the Kriegler, this new word. Start. Just
can LSK go and demand that these are implemented?
LSK has demanded that. I've served in the council of LSK many years back. We have demanded it. Prezo here has been demanding it previous. I think the problem in this country, Doc, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know whether you actually in Kenya, or you are speaking from.
You abbreviate too much. I think you like abbreviation too much.
I think, Doc, let's be sincere.
Because you don't give me
the problem we have in Kenya.
Like state capture inquiry.
I don't mind, but I'm saying the state capture inquiry is another escapism of trying to attempt to establish what is wrong in our country. I'm telling you, we already have a litany of reports, of inquiries that have actually established what is wrong with Kenya. All I'm saying is this, and I want to encourage this government.
Implement the reports.
I want to encourage this government. Please implement whatever reports are there. I think, Doc, you as a constitutional lawyer, you also know that one of the things that we are really lacking for decades is a responsive government to our problems. That is outrightly missing in our country. Yeah. And if we had a responsive government, we cannot be saying, for example, coming from the Kenya of the North, as I choose to call it, and I think I'm about now even declared Kenya of the North to be self-determined itself, because we've been neglected for a long time, yet we say we have a government. You see, why are people dying in northern Kenya every 5 years? We know that the pattern of drought and famine is almost every 5 years. What mechanisms has the government put in place? And there have been reports around what you can address in that country. Question of security. Last weekend, we were burying our sister, Mary. Because Mary responded to a violation, a criminal, a robbery with violence, which people are calling cattle rustling. But it's actually robbery with violence as the law. My cows are my property. If you come and take it forcefully with a gun, you have robbed me violently. So when they reported to the police said, we don't have transportation. So Mary was killed because she offered her car to drive the police officers, and they ran into the ambush, and that's how they are killed, all 11 of them. So what does that say? We don't have a responsive government that has actually equipped its public officers with the necessary resources. And that's why I keep on saying we should not even be debating about chief administrative secretary's positions right now. We should be talking about how do we equip those GSU officers so that they can be able to respond to a violation, to a robbery with violence. We should be talking about how do we, negotiate with our nurses in terms of, the collective bargaining agreement that have been there for decades, doctors, the rest. We should be talking about healthcare in this country. So I think
don't forget lecturers.
Lecturers, yeah. I think we have
almost forgotten Ojwang.
So that you can respond. Yes, sorry. We are thinking about you, Doc. Yeah. I want you to be properly remunerated.
Let's move on.
The challenge I'm having,
gentlemen.
The challenge I'm having is this.
Prof, just the other day, lecturers at Egerton University, I think for the last 2 years, are being paid half salary.
Imagine.
Half.
Full lecturers, they're working.
Yes, they're full lecturers, full time, and they are working. But the institution is not able
to pay them.
Of course, there are all these structural issues, so that we are saying that there are other greater and bigger problems that ought to be addressed. That kind of an injustice. You can imagine being on half pay for 2 years, and it's not guaranteed. In fact, you're never sure whether it will be half, because it is paid determined on how much they generate.
Look at our police officers.
Yes.
Those guys work almost 24/7.
No, actually, a typical police officer rests after 48 hours.
Imagine.
Okay.
So then
All right, Ojwang.
the idea is this.
There's a place I want you to pick from, Ojwang, and of course, Ivan, as you wrap up on that. 2 issues. One of them is the news that has been rife on the week. We lost a 2-year-old at Kenyatta National Hospital. Will not be attended to for 24 good hours. And they say that the biggest test of a nation is how it protects its vulnerable. That's one of them. The second one is what people have called it the capture, release, and recapture. But the TPP, please, I don't know. You pick it from that as you went up in that conversation as well.
I think that let us feed this baby, the 2-month-old baby, so that it can take care of us. So that it can take care of us, because there is a lot for it to do, and it has to move with the speed because the problems are too many. I also think that to some extent, I don't agree with the concept that we have not created new evil since TGRC, so that we are frozen at only implement Ndungu and TGRC, but wing or look the other side, what happened since TGRC up to now. There's a Swahili say that I learned in class 4, mafia kale ayanuki. There have been terrible things that have happened that must also, alongside with those, be investigated. And so TGRC was looking at the 80s, and terrible things happened at the 80s. With President Moi and all that. Ndungu Land Report was looking at new things. Kenyans have found creative ways to capture this state more. So that when we say, let us just focus on what was done, then we will let KEMSA go. I'm not happy with that. So we should look at them all. Finally, on the issue of the baby, what's the baby's name?
Travis.
Yeah.
Travis.
Yeah. So I mean, look at that. Because
and the mother actually said, my child died
because I'm poor. I'm poor.
There was supposed to be 20,500.
Yeah.
And you know, Doc, maybe even as you comment further, I just feel terrible that you know, when we did this constitution, we actually provided for emergency treatment. It's a right. It's a constitutional right that nobody can deny you emergency treatment just because of money. And you know, I've witnessed this. I remember my father-in-law, my late father-in-law, you know, he suffered a stroke, and luckily he had my card, and somebody called me using my card. I told him, okay, put him in a taxi, please bring him to Nairobi Hospital. That was at night, about 8 thereabouts, you know. And I remember the experience I went through at the Nairobi Hospital. That time, remember, the limit even for withdrawing on an ATM was like 40,000. 40,000.
Oh, wow.
And they insisted I must deposit 70,000. I told them, listen, run my card, can run the maximum you want. I can only, you know, withdraw 40. But this is a guy who is collapsed. And so it's not just about that. Many other cases. People actually die waiting to be treated because hospitals in this country want money first. So they are put money first. And I think it's time we call out on these hospitals. And my view, I was replying to Boniface Mwangi's tweet this morning when I saw, you know, the challenge the family went through, just failing to deposit 20,000. And I was saying, I think we need to sue. President, I hope we can take this as LSK. We need to sue Kenyatta National Hospital, the doctor on duty, and the nurse on duty. Because I'm more than happy to work on that case as well. Because the Constitution provides for emergency treatment. Whether you have money or not, you are saving lives. We cannot have a whole chapter called the Bill of Rights, where life is sacred, and we save it. And then somebody comes on an emergency and is being kept there. And you can see the boy had that fork thing on his head.
Yeah.
A little
traumatizing. Yeah.
I mean, even that doctor, nurse, surely I'm assuming they are parents.
Yeah, even from a human,
I mean,
you know,
it's really pissing me off
sympathy,
when
you
we
know,
talk about
point. Yeah, it's extremely sad. So I think let me just join in, you know, passing our condolences to, I think, the mother is called Judy Modoni, the family. This is an extremely sad incident, and we've actually we have a committee, a medical legal committee, the Law Society. We've asked them to look into that issue. We need to address it, but I think even as we address it, we need to address much more in terms of even the charter for patients, the patients charter, because there are a lot of deaths that happen in hospitals that shouldn't happen. There's a lot of, most of the patients, whenever they go to hospital, some of them don't even know what their rights are. And so I think it's something we are going to give priority to ensure that that charter is out, and we begin to raise awareness on some of these things, because I think we have, and for me, this is also where I also get extremely disappointed with the priorities that the government has. When we were growing up, everything that was government was good. Yeah? You had to go to government hospitals because they had the best doctors, they had the best facilities. The schools had the best whatever. But now, we because our taxes are being used for other purposes, instead of the provision of the basic services, we've now privatized everything. So that to get a good hospital, you have to go to a private hospital. To get a good school, you have to go to a private.
To be fleeced.
Yes, of course they fleece.
The moment they see you have got a medical cover, my friend, even the doctor just passing by there,
Wants to bill you.
They bill you just for passing by. They have to just stare at you. So what I think, Professor, you need to do with the medical legal committee, let's sue these guys. I mean, I think we need some action. Kenyatta National Hospital must be sued, the doctor on duty, and the nurse on duty, and even all the people who are around there.
Right. Ojwang was not done with his thoughts. So let's get back to Ojwang. In that order.
I think it is sad. Me, I'll volunteer researching on this issue because maybe if we did not let the story of amputating and doing surgery on the wrong patient and leg in Kenyatta, this might not have come. Remember, that was about 3 years ago?
Yes.
And we made fun out of it, and there was TikTok about it. When somebody woke up and found the wrong patient has been taken to the theater. A few years ago, remember the story of women who are giving birth, who they are hosted at I don't know which floor, and the babies are at another floor, and they have to go breastfeed them. And in the elevator there, they meet the mortician who rapes them. That was Kenyatta a few years ago. So what the challenge we have as Kenyans, we don't stay on the story for long. We look at it and say, Bambi, this is sympathetic, and let it go. If that will have been fixed, what is worse than being raped by a mortician who is wielding a dead body and you have given birth? That also went. And so I think that we should look at this. There's enough blame to go around, but not in terms of just sympathy, but to almost say what people say, never again. Never again that somebody can come, a baby can come into the hospital. I'm imagining what that baby is thinking of this society. What kind of society is this? With the innocence of a baby. And then whether the doctors saw, because right now they are explaining the issue of the blood clotting, that his blood was not clotting. Who else is there to communicate to than the mother who is holding a baby, seeing the life slipping away? That you come, you observe, then you keep quiet, and you go and wait for the blood to clot, because that's the argument, that they did not do the surgery early enough because the baby's blood was not clotting. It's in their duty to explain to the patient where the process is. So this thing of a doctor looking at every other patient as if you are foolish, you are almost a cow. You know, a veterinarian does not need to explain anything to a cow. You need to have explained to the mother what is going on at every stage. I'm looking at even beyond the provisional, the constitution about right to health, which now about right to life, isn't it? But look at the consumer rights under Article 46. Consumer have the right to goods and services of reasonable quality. Can we say what we saw there is of any quality, to the information necessary for them to gain full benefit? Was the person given any information? No. To the protection of their health, safety, and interest. That is Article 46. To compensate for loss or injury arising from defects in goods and services. And you see, I think that I have practiced law in the US in Chicago. And the doctors are very, I've said it, the doctors are tiptoeing around patients. Because one mistake, you are in court. Yes. And I remember there was even a case where the court calculated and said, yes, this patient was actually headed to die, but they had 2% chance. So you, doctor, you are going to pay for the 2% chance that you have messed for them in your mishandling. So then the doctors have the fear of God in them. In this country, to me, the biggest reform should be the possibility and making it possible and easier. It's not easy at all to sue doctors. So that whether the insurance, because you'll rather than not give me any false hope than to keep me there and then cover that body, and then you say it's the will of God. You know, it's God's timing. It is not God's timing. It is not the will of God.
DPP. Let me finish on DPP, then we come back to you. Please.
Because DPP, there is the thought of negligence, as we all understand it.
This is recklessness.
In this country, what my experience has been, even as a practicing advocate for over 20 plus years right now, is that to find a doctor to testify of medical malpractice or negligence is almost a sworn secret. No doctor or nurse will testify on medical negligence.
They only testify when it is their own.
It's their fellow.
When it's a doctor who is making a claim against me, he gets doctors to come and testify.
So there's a conspiracy within
but law can do that.
The poisons and medical whatever board that doctors cannot take the stand.
That we understand each other.
Yes.
Law can do that. Law can crack that. So that, because like in the US, the law have made it possible that you come with an expert witness, even if we have to get them from Tanzania, who can say a reasonable doctor under these circumstances will not have left that djembe on the baby's head for 24 hours, isn't it? But even with that, you know that the promise, and here is where there is expectation, that the promise of universal health cover, which Baba was talking of Baba Care, and Kenya Kwanza was talking of universal health coverage. That this must be rolled out so that Kenyans can have insurance. There is no other way. The Constitution says, even in the cases of economic, the socioeconomic rights that are progressive, that at least the principle is to take care of the most vulnerable. Even if you don't have money, but you cannot say I don't have money, you must start, and there is court cases about it. Judge Nani were very clear. You must at least protect the most vulnerable. Finally, I think that as a country, I wish we don't move from the story. That's why I was giving the context of what had happened. The guy whose leg was the wrong surgery, and then the stories. If we had done something about that then, maybe this child would not have died. And that constitution that talk of social justice, and that the heart of humanity, that a child as innocent an angel here left with a djembe to die 48 hours, yet we talk of it takes a village. Is it every village except the hospital? Is it every village except the doctors? Yes, and they raise their children, they send them to school, they expect the teachers to do their level best, but with them, they can treat anybody else with contempt, including life. But finally, when it comes to the issue of, you said DPP. I think our solution, dropping cases like they're hot, and there is a concept that some states like US does, that before you are charged, there is part of the preview conference is for the judge to satisfy themselves that there is a crime here. You might not have been involved, but there is a real crime, and you are close enough to it. Then we go, it's pre-trial. And that weeds out tagging along this foolishness for so long if there is no case. But number two also, we know that cases are living organisms. So what does DPP do if witnesses drop out? For example, things can change, but of course they must give us the explanation. Is it coincident that they're all just going at the same time? But case management. Case management. Must you continue and hold on the case? Because I know as a DPP, one of the principle is justice, upholding justice. And that justice means if you cannot prosecute me any longer today, because witnesses have withdrawn, you have a duty to not to drag me along the court process, and you know very well that this case has fallen because the witnesses are dropped. That is actually an element of justice. The efficiency in charging people and the efficiency in uncharging them, if there's such a word, is an element of justice. And I've seen, because my first job was working as in a state legal office, that if it is injustice that the person who brought a case against Linturi now have said, I'm no longer interested, then do you now consider for it not to look too sudden? Let me drag on for 2 more weeks. Or you have a duty to immediately say that this case cannot be sustained immediately. And so what we are looking at here and problematizing, in my view, is the coincidence. Is it choreographed? Is it coincident? Is it part of the incompetence? Is it garbage in, garbage out? Is there a little bit of smoke screen? But if there was nothing in those cases, and that is probably what some Kenya Kwanza people told us, for example, that I am being prosecuted. You know, there was a time, President, that people were running this joke that somebody will go to court and say, for the sake of this court, Your Honor, I want to tell you that my client supports BBI. And that was supposed to communicate something to the judges. Of course, it was a joke, but it was how things were going. For avoidance of doubt, my client here believes in the Azimio. And that was me. Now that we have crossed the other side, is it by coincidence that the people who are charged are found that the cases cannot hold? I mean, so should we? I encourage them of being bold to say, hey, I've been carrying on a skunk and dead weight to please some political quarters. This thing is not sustainable in a court of law. You raised a very important issue. I want to see the file and the rationale, but now you are accusing me of operating out of Kenya. Are you operating in Kenya? Can you say without a smirk on your face that there was no political machination here?
No. We talk. Doc, I could listen in the whole day. But like they say, secrecy was never invented in this world. And I hasten to add, certainly not in Kenya. So I see the way things are being done. I mean, I like the fact that you brought the question of coincidence. We don't need to problematize it. It is evident, in my view. I mean, I think as rational beings, we can actually see, so yes, we can ask the question, is it really a coincidence some of these cases are being dropped down? And I think DPP really needs to come out clean and say, when they analyze this file from the DCI upon somebody reporting the commission of an offense called, say, rape, they analyzed the evidence, they looked at the witness statements, then they preferred a charge. And the person was arrested and arraigned in court. You see, one thing we should not forget, Doc, even as people drop these cases, even as you try to justify, criminal offenses are against the state. The victim is just a victim, but you are violating the law. You're just a witness. You are violating the law of the land. So whether somebody comes and says, you've worked in the US, and you know that sometimes whether people come and want to withdraw the case or not, they will tell you, no. But this is a violation against the law of the land. So we are not going to let you off the hook. It's like what they call, I mean, sometimes I think in parts of northern Kenya, NFD, the maslaha. That you kill somebody, then you sit down and agree. Blood money. That is a violation. I mean, and a proper rule of law country should be able to say, no, I'm sorry. You cannot violate the law and then get away with it because mesikizana. What if tomorrow I declare myself a warlord in Turkana and say, all this oil is ours? I wish I could actually. I think maybe it's about maybe it's about time actually. Because after all, look at the way we are being killed like dogs.
No, it's not fair. Yes.
So maybe it's about time we even invoke the 1984 Declaration on Self-Determination and say, let's self-determine ourselves as the Kenya of the North. Yeah, I wouldn't mind being the president of the North because then I can fix this shit.
And your people, yeah.
Excuse my French, but
because people are dying.
People are dying.
I am president.
No, but before the president comes, there is also a crime called malicious prosecution. It's not common here, but it exists, where you are prosecuted for no other reason than to oppress you and to frustrate you. I think all these people who have been released should now go after DPP for malicious prosecution.
They should sue
yes, and the state should also go after maybe the witnesses for perjury. So I think that is where we should go. We should say that regardless,
you've released me back
of whatever happened, I will take your word for it that there is no evidence.
Yes.
But why did you charge in the first place? Because if you charge these people without just cause, then you are maliciously prosecuting them, and they can even now be compensated. President, these are your victims. Hawa ni watu wako wote. Don't look at just one quarter. Usiegemee sana,
Egemea kidogo. As you come in as the president accepted.
Question there. You see, there has to be a consequence of why, for example, you withdraw a court case. Especially, taxpayers' money have been spent in all this process. Let's not forget that. There's a cost implication to it. Right from the investigating officer and all that. So crimes of perjury, lying, falsification, or whatever, I think those issues need to be brought back. And I don't know whether the state deeply knows that if today someone like Linturi and others actually sued them for compensation for malicious prosecution, the compensation is hefty.
And I think that's a question that the president was raising, and was saying that what is the danger of the admission of DPP, that we charged people because of political manipulation and all that. And as you come in, President, Nicholas Irungo says, I'm also worried of how cases on those from Azimio are reappearing and those from Kenya Kwanza disappearing. I'm sure something is going on. I'm a Kenya Kwanza supporter, but be careful. like the moon and the sun. As the sun disappears, the moon appears. President, what are your thoughts on that as well?
No, I think that what is happening right now is something that is annihilating our institutions. Then the question becomes, what have we been doing? What has the criminal justice system been doing? Has it been persecuting or prosecuting?
Wow.
And you ask yourself, going forward, how do you trust any case that would be mounted by the DPP after the so-called thorough investigations by our agencies? So if our investigative agencies, in a way, then can be used for ulterior purposes, where are we as a country? Who is safe? Those are now the real questions. It's not just about the fact that DPP is dropping cases, but you have to ask yourself, are you safe in this country? Yeah. Are you safe in this country? And let me just say this, and so that we can begin to understand the magnitude of the problem that we have. When you look at the statistics in terms of the people who are in jail, those who are in jail below 1 year, or let's say a threshold of 3 years, are more than 70% of the population that is in jail. Okay. Now, those below 1 year and those below 3 years in ordinary, in any whatever, would be what you would call the petty offenses.
Chicken thief.
The petty offenses. And in most instances, those petty offenses are unrepresented. So what is happening today is now reflecting the disease that is in the criminal justice system. In fact, one of the other things which we did, and when we were looking at this report at NCAJ, is to say we need to find a way to decongest prisons, because you have a lot of people. I wish I had the numbers right now, but I can tell you it is more than 70%. Actually, those who are below 1 year are like 30 to 20,000. The population is about 50. Is about 50. So you look at it, and the productive life of people is being wasted in jail because of petty offenses. So what does this, what the DPP is doing now, how does it translate? We sit there and you ask yourself, do you have a credible justice system that is actually serving the purpose for which criminal justice system is intended to serve, to deter crime and to punish appropriately those who have transgressed against public order? That is the real challenge that we're having. So there is a crisis of confidence in the police. There's a crisis of confidence in the DPP. So that every case that is now before the court, there is a challenge as to whether it is in court for proper motives. And that's the reason why we need these explanations and coming out and saying, you know what, I charged without proper evidence and I am taking responsibility. And this is how I am taking responsibility. Okay. Because it is the only way we can begin to have a conversation and to now say, what really should our justice system be like?
Right. I want to borrow your 10 minutes from Bunga. I want to borrow your 10 minutes from Bunga.
Question relating to, I think I'll call it political expediency. If these cases are being withdrawn now because of a new administration, it means there is a conversation that must have taken place between DPP and the incoming administration. So these offices ought not to be politically expedient on the new administration. Because like you said yourself, I mean, somebody said there, the KK cases are disappearing, but Azimio are appearing. So there is political expediency, but it also leads us to think about the independence of our institutions under Chapter 15.
That's the big question.
And I think for me,
that's the biggest question. Yes.
Yeah, very fast. I think who had the conversation? Is it the new administration? So that we are seeing the effect that we are talking about? Or is the previous administration which had the conversation so that we saw the prosecution that are now being dropped? There lies the issue of state capture.
Yeah. Do you think there is a nexus between the so-called resignation of the DCI and the IG and the dropping of cases?
Even NIS guy.
Yeah, and even if there is a connection, then it means what Dr. Aukot is saying.
It's true. On the institutions.
Is what might have happened. Yes. Yeah. Because there must be some sort of a relationship, because these are the people who presided over the investigations that led to those charges.
All right.
So is there a nexus? And if there is a nexus, shouldn't we then be extremely worried?
Or that if the nexus is that they were serving political purpose.
The alternative is this. If then there is no nexus between that, then it basically means that
there's interference now.
Yeah, because these people are in government.
No, no.
There's a simple parallel.
Yes, don't see. Before the parallel, there's a little bit of closing the circle.
We're running out of time.
Because we are really abbreviating. That if now the people are resigning, if they are resigning because they knew they were operating politically, they charged wrongfully, and therefore they are resigning. The common adage of the guilty are always running. So they left. Why should we only imagine that it is the new administration that spoke to them and not that they knew what they did before? And that is why...
And I think that's what President has said. He said there are two possibilities.
No, but the likeliness. Which one is more likely?
I'm saying that it is...
Let's not confuse the...
It is either.
No, so
yeah, it cannot be both.
No, Doc, let's not beat about the bush. Let's just even pick one.
No pushing.
Goja, you know, it's a metaphor. Me, I thought you speak better English than me.
Of course,
Even where you come from, the USA. The Uganda But I think let's be very honest here. One, I actually welcome the resignations because it speaks something about integrity. If somebody does not believe in the incoming administration, there's no need of pretending to serve under that administration. We don't believe in it. So I think I welcome Kinoti. I welcome, the NIS guy and the IG, Tiambai. I think maybe they are saying, we don't believe in this administration. I don't want to work with you.
They are guilty.
For me, I don't know about their guilt.
Or they never resigned.
Their guilt, their guilt is a question of evidence, be talk.
That I'm saying, okay, maybe.
But I think what I want to appreciate in the first instance is their integrity to say, I don't like you, Doc. I will never work with you, and I'm quitting. That's integrity. Yeah. So and so the second thing is this. Now I've even lost my. What was the second point I was trying to make?
Right. As you collecting your thoughts, let's go to Bunga. Let's go to Bunga. I want to steal your 10 minutes.
No, before you go to Bunga, when you hear words like "let us be honest," that is where the dishonesty begins. Because if I was trained to pick those words. Whenever somebody is saying, let us be honest,
they're about to lie.
It means that what they're saying is not very honest, but they use that word so that you gloss over it and say, si amesema atakuwa honest.
No, the second point I want to say is this. Let's go to Bunga, is that there is a direct correlation between these resignations and the appointments. I'll give you one example.
Association, not correlation.
Okay, association. Whatever. You know me, I'm not very... English is not...
No, that's a research one. Correlation does not mean causation.
No, I know. Doc, let's not speak a lot of English. Tunaongea Kenya hapa.
Twende, Masai imeenda daktari.
Linturi
Masai imetuacha.
Is an appointee, a nominee for cabinet position.
Or agriculture.
So to answer your question, it's possible and I believe this new administration must have spoken to whoever the complainant was to say, listen, my nominee is about to be vetted in parliament. Hatutaki madoadoa, SG, rep or whatever. So I leave it at that.
Maybe I want to see that lady on the eye and ask her, why you raped?
All right. Headphones on.
No, he said before he fell, and the gadget accidentally.
Accidents happen, my brother. Accidents happen. All right. Let's go to Bunga, please. Let's have your headphones on. As we open up Bunga, since it's a call already. Anthony Barasa says, Dr. Ojwang, the tackle. For purposes of this case, quote in quote, my client supports BBI. Close and quote. Now, we should say, Your Honor, for purposes of this case, my client supports Kenya Kwanza. Judge case dropped. All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Bwana Gerald. Mambo namna gani?
Mambo vipi?
Hello, good morning.
Habari ya New Jersey?
Salama. Mzuri sana. Kwanza ningependa kusalamia panelists wote. Hiyo ni Ellis na ningependa kwanza kuchukua tu individually kila mtu. Mwanzo niingie kwa rafiki yangu Dr. EKURU. Pole sana kwa kupoteza dada yako. Nilikuwa nimesikia story mashinani huko. Na yote ni ya Mungu tu. And then kitu ya pili nilikuwa nikitaka kusema kwamba kwa Dr. EKURU kwamba this is I would like first to appreciate him because he's one of the fathers of the Constitution. So we really appreciate him and give him all the accolades that he deserves. And then niingie kwa President Theuri, pia nimrudishie shukrani sana na it's not a simple task kuongoza watu wenye akili mingi kama hiyo, And Dr. Ojwang, Professor, my favorite. Asante sana kwako kwa you made it very simple in explaining wakati kulikuwa na ile kizungumkuti ya koti, how you came to one of the TV station and you were able to explain everything as pertaining to, you know, what route the Azimio was taking and how it was an effort in futility. And, you know, you are recognized a lot in the whole country, and we appreciate your effort. Alafu nikuje kwako Gerald, nikwambie pia asante sana kwa hii kipindi yako, kwa sababu huwa inatuletea elite. Watu ambao how you scout them is something that most of the TV stations don't know. So congratulations kwako kwa unaleta watu wa maana. So nikirudi hapa kwa issue kadhaa tu nitaongea haraka haraka. You know, wakati wa BBI nilikuwa nikiwa wanasema basic structure, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a villager. You know, there was something that was called basic structure. Can we have basic structure? It can be respectable and can be protected, because tukiangalia kama cases kama hii ambayo imekuwa sasa mara inakuwa nullified ama nini. What was the basic structure? Because our constitution has its own basic structure, but in other operations, we have basic structures. And when a case is being prosecuted, what was the basic structure that was applied? Ikifanyika hivi, so that it can be protected either way, if it was malicious or if it was intentional, political, what was the basic structure? And everybody is protected. Tuingie kwa ule mtoto mdogo, mtakimbia haraka haraka. Mtoto mdogo hapo kwa
Kenya International Hospital. Hello.
You know, I'm just giving I'm just giving.
I think there's an interruption on your call, sir. Sorry. Jamani, just ni kama kidogo kama zingekuwa zile masiku tungesema wametuma balloon, lakini sasa mambo ni tofauti. At least we had someone to blame. Now we don't. Right, Maina from New Jersey.
Kidogo mambo maneno ya hospitali kidogo.
I think if kama kidogo amekuwa kizungumkuti. Let's listen to Joel Arama. Joel Arama, good morning. Bunga la Manyanchi, jambo. Bunga la Manyanchi, jambo. Chairman.
Hey, Bwana Gerald.
Yes, sir. How are you? Chairman.
First of all, let me start. Aukot, pole sana kwa msiba. We have no answers to. But coming back to the issues at hand, let me start with a little bit of humor. Aukot, to answer your question about my amica's brother Ojwang, unajua Rongai ni diaspora. So, mjamaa yuko Kenya. Diaspora.
No, but he lives in Kenya, but he works in diaspora.
Better than Huntsville, Alabama. Yeah, you call Huntsville, Alabama.
Alabama is closer.
So I think he's in the wrong show. He needs to come back to our diaspora show so that we can discuss diaspora.
But we need that diaspora wisdom, which is oozing.
But in all seriousness, guys, first of all, let me thank you guys so much for actually offering to take that issue for the young guy who lost his life for what we say is criminal act. We can't even call it negligence. That's criminal act. I'm not a lawyer by any measure, but I've watched enough legal ish proceedings in various places to understand some basics about legal stuff. So, and I appreciate that. I think, Mr. President, you are bringing back the LSK I used to know when I was growing up, reading, alikuwa naitwa nani ule mjamaa alikuwa na Weekly Review and some other magazines for Law Society. I'm seeing that coming back, and
or Gitob.
Yes. Gitob Manyara, yes. So I really appreciate that, and I think the more we do this, then we can get our society to become more, because a society without law is not a society at all. So we might as well be in a jungle. So I think that's a good approach, and I appreciate that very much. now to my friend, my brother. Leo umelemewa umekuwa tackle sana, lakini let me just add one more tackle. Please, hii statement ya kusema the state capture inquiry will resolve everything. You know, will bring you back and ask you what happened when the price of unga is still 400. But we should not spend our time in exercise of futility, because we already have examples of reports have never been acted upon. Can we answer one question? What is the purpose of the inquiry? Are we going to act on it, or is it just a sideshow like any other good TV, PR, getting time to do analysis, and that's the end of it? So if it's not going to serve any purpose, then let's forget about it and just move on to other issues that are actually affecting common mwananchi. Because I can tell you right now, I'm even more concerned about the rate of inflation and all the issue of coming. Now, it's good for me, because right now, if I'm sending you money, the exchange rate right now for me to send is 120 and 90. I think it's going to be 121 by tomorrow.
Let's see that.
So it's good for you.
Practical.
So it's not good for them. So these are some of the things that we actually need to address. I mean, I've kind of lost a couple of things that I was noting down when you guys were talking. But it's been a very informative discussion. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully, this government will actually go to the basics of fulfilling your at least even 20% of the promises you gave to the Kenyans. Please give us that. Because we have been told all kinds of promises, and that's never happened. Even 1%, give us at least 20%. And above all, Mr. President, and I don't mean the LSK president, I'm talking to the president of the country. Please, the rule of law should be the supreme guidance for your issues. Now, one of the things that I'm worried about when it comes to the legal judiciary system is we talked about the VP issue also in our show yesterday. And this was a big concern for us. Just to ask a question, Azimio was there for the last 1 year or 2 years, but some of these cases have been in court for over 5 years. So, I mean, are we going back retroactive and say Azimio messed up before it even became in existence? So let us be realistic, and also the DPP should come out clear and tell us, why did you drop these cases? And please, you may have a very reasonable explanation, but you can't just wake up one day and drop 2 cases or 5 cases, and all these people have one common factor. Then we are left to draw our own conclusion. That's a challenge. And also to the judiciary itself. We have a challenge that you need to be consistent in what you are issuing. For example, you cannot have a politician who come and says, please suspend my case because I'm going for campaigns, and you agree you're suspended the proceedings. And also, you find the Supreme Court saying, hey, our decision that we rendered was, it was God was involved. So are you telling me I can use God as a defense when I go to court and say God told me, then that's a defense? No. Sometimes our words, like you guys said, our words actually have more impact, and we need to be careful what we say. If it's not based on law, let it just be a personal opinion, and don't put it in statements that are going to come out. And the same thing with the president, the statements you make as a deputy president, as a president, actually are interpreted as a policy, and people may act upon it, and when it's not the right thing. So that's my encouragement, but thank you much. It's been a wonderful show, and I appreciate it very much, and I'm looking forward. When time karibu change, so I will not be spending midnight listening to the show. It will be a little bit better for me now.
Thank you. I hope the time changes everywhere for diasporans, and also even in Rongai. Asante, Chairman. Thank you so much. Atticus now from the United Kingdom. Salimia, Mr. Jeremiah Chairman Manyewe. Asante sana. Good morning, Jira. Good morning to you, Atticus. All right, I'll give each one of you, I beg to close it here. I'll give it 1 minute. Exactly 1 minute. Exactly 1 minute. I know the New Jersey guys will appear again now. It looks like we don't have time. 1 minute each. I'll start with Dr. Ojwang, then I go to Presida, and we close with EKURU.
Asante. My friend Arama should stick to eating vegetarian burgers in Huntsville. And because he makes very good vegetarian burgers, I've eaten in his house, and he's a family friend. When somebody's saying, God has helped me, it doesn't mean that they did not apply law. At all. I think quite the opposite. And I think we are theorizing the non-establishment clause in the US, the separation of church and state too hard, because the Constitution recognizes that people can express their faith. And clearly they have a right to do that. Finally, I think even the criticism of the judiciary is too early and is testosterone driven.
Okay.
Law is full of bullying. So we want Chief Justice Martha to be a bully, to act with testosterone, to be antisocial. Much of the criticism have not been actually on the decision, but oh wow, why is she lining up there to greet the president? I think let us not form a judiciary in our own male testosterone competitive image. Women are emotionally intelligent. They do things a little different, and let us look at the essence, so that the image of why is this so close? You know, men are driven by testosterone, and I'm seeing most of the criticism are on that. I look forward to a powerful judiciary, impactful judiciary. The institutions must be unclogged; they must work. But let us not be hypocrites, because here you put on the table a 1-month baby, you forget all what has been done in this country, and you look at that 1 month baby and say, what happened to our land that we lost in the 60s? This baby, we should feed it, we should take care of it, we should change and criticize it when necessary, so that it takes care of us. I'm glad for the bold bar. I think that there must be a third eye. People should not be let to be comfortable, because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Nobody, it should not be left that, so and so is sincere, have good heart, they will do the right thing. We should continue asking the right question, but we should also support the government so that it gets on its feet and feed us and help us. But state capture will give a lot of solution to what my friends here are asking.
State capture or state capture inquiry?
Boy, it sucks if you are in that report.
Is it state capture or state capture inquiry?
The inquiry on state capture. Because you see, corruption is stealing a chicken. State capture is stealing the hen that lays the chicken. And that is what we have been facing.
All right, President.
I think my final parting shot would actually be to urge the Kenyan people, all civil society of goodwill, to rise to the occasion. We are seeing very early but indicative steps of a government that is intent on being rogue, of a government that is intent of having its way, irrespective of what our laws and our constitution says. I've, just been looking at the press, and you have seen the statements or comments in the press attributed to the president, where he is saying that the position of CAS is here to stay, irrespective of what the court may determine. Those, in my view, are indications of what we've all been talking about, that state capture is dead and it is now alive. So long, we came to kill state capture, but we are now actually implementing state capture, but in a more smoother and a more refined and perhaps a frightening manner. We look around, you can see it happening. And it is something that will require the collective wills of all Kenyans, because we have bigger problems, and those problems will not be tackled if we annihilate our institutions. So I'd also want to throw a challenge to the institutions that have been created under the Constitution, that they owe their fidelity to the Constitution and to the Kenyan people. They exercise whatever powers they do on behalf of the Kenyan public, and they should exercise those powers only for the public good. Because if they resort to taking instructions from other quarters and overlook the public good, then in a few years' time, we would not have a country we are talking about. We would be in the complete wild west. I think we are seeing what the proponents of BBI wanted, coming back, but it is coming back through the back door. They wanted an expansion of the cabinet. You're already seeing it happening. Yeah, where we have some sort of an oxymoron that we are saying that we have a cabinet secretary who is a super cabinet secretary, but the structure does not conform at all with what the Kenyan people wanted when they were giving themselves this constitution. So what are we looking at? We are looking at certain aspects of BBI being brought in through the back door and through craft and innovativeness. Right. And for me, it is something that as Kenyans we should not countenance for purposes of political expediency, because the problems and the challenges that we continue to face are problems of governance. And governance, when it starts on deception, when governance says that I will have my way, irrespective of what the law and the constitution says, and this has been captured by the president. The president has said that we do not exist to obey the law. That the law must serve us. If we disagree with it, then we repeal it or we amend it. It's extremely dangerous.
Doesn't the law exist to serve us?
No. Those
it's
are
Aquinas who said unjust law is not law at all.
Those. You see, the moment you take that route, you also say that you have no obligation to obey an unjust law. But who then determines that the law is just or unjust?
Depending on which side of the fence.
Yes, because if we go outside the structures of the Constitution to determine whether the law is just or unjust, then we might as well as say, let us suspend the Constitution. Let us suspend the Constitution.
And we ask whether the law is serving the end of justice.
Of course.
You're already exhausted. You already exhausted your minutes.
That is an ongoing. That is an ongoing discussion that is always had. And we're not saying that the law operates in a vacuum. And we know of so many laws that perhaps are not serving the purpose for which they are whatever. And there is a process for law reform and review and enriching the law. Okay. But I am saying this in the context of when the president, and we have had 10 years of an administration that paid little regard to court orders. The deputy president then is now the president now. And he is also, in his few pronouncements, 2 months into his office, he's saying, those court orders, we are not going to. Isn't it a continuation of the policy and the legacy of the previous administration?
Was the court binding the president? Of course it should.
It was for the binding,
Public Service Commission.
It is binding on every individual.
But who did you sue? Public Service Commission. Did you sue the president?
No, I think now you are descending to the realm.
This is an order in realm.
Yeah, you're descending now to the realm of being argumentative and forgetting about the principle. We are now talking about the principle, which is what we should be telling the public. Because if you now descend in below the principle, then what will the public be doing when they are served with a court order? They'll be saying, and we all know those things. They happen. The other thing is this. Look at it. The deputy president says that if you give us an order for eviction from the court, we will subject it to a security committee which will look at it and all those things. What are we saying? What is the message that is coming out from the executive with regard to their respect for the rule of law? That a court order will come, but then we are going to review it and decide whether we are going to implement it or not. Or how to, you see, that is the message that all of us should be worried about. And that is the thing that I am saying, that when all the chips are down, who is going to protect us?
All right.
So,
Daktari,
3 quick things for me.
tuende nyumbani.
First of all, picking from what President Theuri has left, and I'm sure Professor Ojwang knows this very well, that when you read the social foundations of law, one of the the conclusion is that law emanates from within the framework of society. So law is us. We make the law to serve us. So yes, but we make the law for purposes of regulating our relations in society. So it's a reflection of us. It's our law. Now, secondly, I will say this. To know where you're going, you must know where you came from. So this administration cannot tell us that, we forget some of the things of the past, because that's what I was saying. They are partly a continuation of that, of that past. Yeah. So we cannot forget that. So even as they take us to the next level, but we cannot also forget where we came from as a country. And lastly, on this question of state capture, which Prof likes a lot to talk about, I'm reminded of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ died and then resurrected. So state capture may have died with the old administration, but I think it has resurrected with this new administration. So the story of Jesus Christ, death and rising from the dead. So we are not yet out of the hoods.
A very strong example from Sunday school. You saw when you judge long time ago.
Even Ojwang has become
That's a very weak example. Be going to church often, be reading your Bible often.
But you see, Prof. So if you look at, for example, just that pronouncement by the president about the law, we are reminded of how the Jubilee administration, which he deputized at that time, was disobeying orders
all
of the court. Yeah. All of them. Yeah. So now, in his new administration, he's also telling us that, we can disregard the law based on what? There has to be some findings, either a debate on whether this law is serving the country or not. So it cannot be a roadside pronouncement.
I also have a problem with that first part, but you see, he did not blame the court. What we had before, may I remind you, was every pronouncement from court is these courts, these judges. He did not blame the court. He accepted it is law. That is the first belief. That's why he's calling it law. But he's saying law is meant to serve the people and not the people to serve the law, and therefore it can be reviewed.
But he also forgot one thing, Doc, and you know this, and you teach this every day. On the concept of the rule of law, we all must fear and respect the law. Now, if the law is not serving us right, and I agree with him to the extent that we can either amend it or repeal it. And there are many laws that have been repealed in the past, including even our own independence constitution. Yeah. We replaced it because we never participated. We never participated in the writing of that independence constitution. Some people wrote it in Lancaster House Conference in London. We were not there.
Constitution from the coal.
Exactly. So it was not our law. Yeah. But I think there's an obligation, as spelled out in Article 3, that we must all uphold, respect the Constitution and the rule of law. So on the one hand, he is right, but he should also give us the evidence. What is this law? Generalities, again, don't serve us right. Let's be specific. If a law is bad, like now, I know we'll continue this. Yes. I think if there's one law that the president needs to repeal, in my view, is the CDF Act.
Okay.
That needs to go because most of those functions of the CDF have since been transferred to the county government. Let's allow the county government to perform its function as spelled out in Schedule 4 of our Constitution. This thing of trying to give MPs another function of development, let them focus on 3 things: represent, legislate, and oversight.
Parliament.
That's what Supreme Court said.
Thank you. Nafal Kibichi, I agree with the 100%. The president needs to time his approaches in solving the issues and confine them inside existing laws. Okay. All right. Jimmy Nyakundi watching live from Kisii, loving the intellects are articulating issues. All right. It's been a pleasure having you, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, President, for making time this morning. Asante sana, Dr. Ojwang, for coming in. EKURU and Mutiango, asante sana for making time again today. Yeah, you're my guy.
Ako cabinet. The one
cabinet. Ojwang anasema hapo politician.
But we have prophesied a few things that have come true.
Yes. Sisi kama uko na unabii ingine leo.
No, to be honest with you, I think even looking at the totality of all this conversation in the summary, I think this government is starting on the wrong footing. You know, you can't swear to hold an office using the constitution and then all of a sudden you're actually violating the same constitution. Irrelevant immediately.
After you swear.
Like I said, and I'll repeat it here, Ruto made history. In his first attempt to become president of Kenya, and he made it. Yes. But he can also make history to be the first one-term president if he doesn't tread very carefully.
All right. And I think that's actually, we're having that discussion with Ojwang before you guys came in. And Raila Odinga seems to be tracing back on his steps. And he's realizing why he lost the elections is with the people, a constituency that he has controlled for a very long time, the hustlers. And now he's going back to the hustlers. So, I mean, these are the people who could be very dissatisfied very easily if William Ruto is not very careful. And Raila Odinga could end up again recouping that constituency and running with it in 2027, maybe to give someone else to inherit it. But, well, that's a question in the coming months. Also, the investigation is out.
We talk, 8 million Kenyans did not vote. 8 million.
That's quite a number.
8 million.
We don't know why.
There was apathy.
Yes, but there is, in my view, there is apathy, and there is people like you who have given up. So the 8 million Kenyans have already given up.
Given up or not have shown up here. You are talking of me like I'm suicidal or something.
People who have already immigrated.
Here is somebody waiting for inquiry on state capital. How can you call that person to have given up?
All right, thank you. There's also the investigation is out on the 2 Indians and 1 Kenyan who disappeared for almost 80 days now. So the investigation was out yesterday. It was presented to the president, I believe, at the State House. So we're waiting to see. There's been some speculation around it. Some say the gentlemen were thrown to be beaten by feces.
To expand, in my view, and the Law Society is working on a petition. We need to expand that inquiry because we have close to 200, 300 people who have been extrajudicially killed, and a significant number who are also missing. So that inquiry ought to be expanded because people have just been disappearing in this country, and I think it is important that we begin to get closure on some of these things, so that it shouldn't be because maybe it is rumored that they had come to assist the campaign of the deputy president. So we don't want to make the presumption that these ones are getting that special treatment because they had an association with the president, and now that he's president, then he's using his office to ensure that is done. And if that is the case, and we as a professor should be worried about the capture of institutions that these institutions are being used to advance, because this is personal.
Let us avoid the impulse to label.
I'm saying
this is becoming as a disease in this country. The impulse, prone to wonder, prone to label.
All I'm saying is this, that we need.
Then unlabel us.
Listen, Daktari, I'm saying that there is a need to expand this inquiry because there are a lot of people who have disappeared. It is not just these two.
Rivayala.
Yes, Rivayala is full, and
even Kiambu man today.
I think the Lions probably at Savo and whatever have really been consuming on a lot of this.
Yes, there are many. No, there are many.
There are many. So that we don't want to get to a situation where that it is only those who are closely associated who disappear.
Who get justice. All right.
But I want Professor back to Kenya.
He is around.
Yeah.
I can confirm. I can confirm.
You are safe from labeling and mislabeling things because if it was the Kenya Bureau of Standards, they would have arrested you for mislabeling things and wrong.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. It's been a pleasure. Thank you that all the tacklers who have been on this morning. It's always a pleasure to have you. Until Monday on the Common Sense edition, I wish you a very great weekend. Enjoy your weekend. Take care and catch you on a Monday. Still want to remind you that if you can see this, then clearly your next client can see it. So you can advertise with us. Call the number on your screen, or you can WhatsApp us. Then we can give your brand a great deal of visibility. We want to remind you that you can also wear the biggest brand in town. The tackle hoodie is only at 2,500 Kenyan shillings. Make your order on the WhatsApp number on the screen as well. But you can get when you wear the biggest brand in town, you're not only wearing the brand, but you're also helping us to become better. And also, finally, final chance at your dreams. You're giving an opportunity to record. Yeah, if you have a content dream, make sure it can become through here. So you can check it out. The number on your screen. Talk to Steve. Book your appointment. Alafu basi next week tuweza kujua ni aje. And also
kuna jambo moja nataka
all the SDI mixes. She is back on scene. So you'll enjoy your SDI mixes tonight. You know, Ojwang is an elder, SDA elder. So please make sure you tune in the evening and you get to enjoy the SDA mixes so that maybe they can stop saying you are away. They can see you here. Listen to SDA songs. And until then, take care.
I want
to
politically come back to Kenya. Not physically. I know physically is here. But in terms of real politique, which he knows very well.
You have been petitioned. All right, you have by petition to come back.
One of these labels.
All right.
Bring back
They
the
wanna be Turkana what?
All right, bye-bye and take care. This is the time it ends right now. Bye-bye.